Hello, and thanks for listening to the first ever episode of the Videostore Junkies podcast, a podcast about movies and the experience of watching them. Before we get started, I have to warn you, this episode is a little rough. Due to some hardware issues on my end that didn't manifest until I went to edit the episode, my audio in particular sounds pretty awful. But we had a good conversation about Mad Max, so I've salvaged what I could and I present it here for your listening pleasure, or lack thereof. If you can bear with the audio issues, I hope you enjoy our discussion. And if you can't, well, check back in 2 weeks for our next episode. I can guarantee the sound quality will be better, although our banter will probably be just as bad. It's Friday night, so you know there's only one place in town where you'll find us, renting some beat-up VHS tapes down at the local video store. Tonight, I'm wandering the aisles looking for some film escapism, but I don't know exactly what I'm in the mood for. Oh wait, what? Oh, what's this?
Tomorrow, in a world gone mad. The only law will be a renegade squad of suicidal cops.
He's my prisoner, and he's not walking out that door.
And the open road will be controlled by gangs of glory roaders. Max is a cop, one of the best.
Where does they're out to get you? Scoot junkies? Yeah, nomad trash. Well, I'll add it to my thread collection.
That's right. Tonight we're going to be talking about one of the most influential action films of all time, Mad Max. And I'm joined in the video store tonight by a whole slew of fellow film addicts. So let's start by introducing ourselves and talking about our relationship to this movie. Is it something we grew up watching, or are we just watching it for the first time? Paul, since you're easily taken off guard, let's start with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I have to actually introduce myself?
You can say your name, or you can say an alias, whatever you feel comfortable saying.
Okay. Well, hi. This is Paul Cardillo. And let's see. Crap. Put me on the
I didn't
spot
mean to put you
there,
on the
man.
spot. Yeah.
Yeah, holy crap. So anyway, we'll just jump right into about Mad Max. I remember seeing the commercials when I was a kid, because it was 79, so I'd have been about 12. And it was like, ooh, look at that movie. And this was the first one, Mad Max. And that just kind of disappeared. I was like, okay. I just remember seeing like people flying off of motorcycles on the commercials. And then when Road Warrior came out, everyone's like, oh my God, Road Warrior is the coolest thing. I'm like, wait, this is a sequel to that other movie. But neither of which I actually watched in the theaters. It wasn't until a couple years later I started watch both of them on VHS, enjoyed them, and then and so on. Watched the rest of it, but I didn't really watch them again, to be honest. Probably till right when Fury Road was coming out, and so I was like, well, I got to show this to my kids who were in their 20s at that point, well, late teens, and so I went and got the Blu-rays and watched them again and really enjoyed it. And said, "Wow, this really matches up with so it was fun." But that's my exciting and thrilling take on it.
Cool. Renee, how about you?
Oh man, you were gonna go to me next.
Well, I know Bill's prepared always, so I'm trying to catch the rest of you off guard.
I thought I was gonna have a long break to think about my thoughts. I did not realize that this was the first Mad Max movie, and so it was new to me. And yeah, I enjoyed it, and I don't want to go too far into it, just for my first initial thoughts and my personal relationship with this particular film. I don't really have one, so it's brand new to me, but I enjoyed it.
Cool. And Bill, how about you?
So, actually, I'm used to having people introduce me. It's weird to do.
Oh, sorry. I
So
can
I'm
introduce you.
Bill Mulligan, man about time. I'm Bill Mulligan. I am a high school science teacher and indie filmmaker and podcaster, and I love movies. And I love this one, but my real relationship with this movie is I went to see The Road Warrior when it first came out at the theater, and it was practically a religious experience. It was, instantly one of my top 10 favorite movies that I had ever seen, and is probably still lurking up around there. Just amazing. I couldn't believe it. And then to find out that there was a sequel to another movie, I had to run out, and the first chance I got, I think I found a gray market copy of Mad Max at some mafia-owned video store. But it was the American dubbed version, which is dreadful. because the Australians speak English, so they had to dub them. In fairness, they speak Australian English, which is really hard. I watched it this time with the subtitles and did catch a lot of nuances, like entire monologues that I hadn't caught before that actually made sense now. But I think it's a great movie. But it's not The Road Warrior. It's not, and it's certainly not Fury Road or anything. But it's really, to me, it's fascinating as part of the series. And I think the Mad Max series is one of the great achievements in cinema, because it is the most heroic, the telling of the hero's journey, and to watch this character go from being a man to being basically, by the last movie, almost godlike. To tell those stories in that way is just amazing. So it's definitely essential viewing. And yeah, I'm quite fond of it. It was fun watching it again.
Cool. And finally, Alan, how about you?
So my name is Alan Watkins, and my first experience with Mad Max was when I heard the Tina Turner song on the radio back in the 80s, and I thought that was the only Mad Max movie until about 2 weeks ago when we decided to do this. So,
Wow.
hey, I've looked things up, and there's like 4 of them or something. So yeah, needless to say, this was my first time watching Mad Max.
Cool, great.
Any of them. So I'm watching them in order, I guess, because I started with the first one.
This is like recommending Goldfinger to someone, and they come back. It's like, man, that James Bond was great. Are there any others like it?
Well, so it's actually funny you mentioned that. So this was actually the third Mad Max movie that I had watched, because I remember when I was a kid. First of all, I wasn't allowed to watch R-rated movies until I was about 13 or 14. I think the first one I saw was Thunderdome, and I probably saw that on like network TV on Saturday morning. And then eventually I watched The Road Warrior, which, like Bill said, was kind of a transcendent film watching experience. But then I think that because, I grew up in a small town and we only had like 2 video stores. So if they didn't have the movie you wanted to watch there, you just didn't get to watch it. So it wasn't until a lot later that I actually found a copy of the first movie. And I was very confused when I watched it, because watching Thunderdome and Road Warrior, and they're obviously like, high octane post-apocalyptic action films. And then this one, which is a high octane action film, but it's definitely not post-apocalyptic. It's got, Mad Max in his house being domestic with his wife. And it's just like, wait, what?
Yeah. It's pre-apocalyptic.
Yeah, it's pre-apocalyptic.
In fact, it's the only pre-apocalyptic movie, because although it wasn't when it came out, it was what it was. But watching it now, it's like, oh my God, those poor people, they have no idea that this is as good as it's going to get. Because in about 5 years, it's going to be just like, roving bands of rapist cannibals. You know, you think it's tough now, but
which is
I was looking for more of that in this.
Rapist cannibals.
Of course you were.
My friend, you're in luck, because the 3 sequels, they have plenty of that. So yeah, before there's actually a lot of interesting stuff I didn't know, because I actually hadn't watched this movie I hadn't watched any of the original 3 in probably about 15 or 20 years. So when I rewatched them recently, I was just like, oh my gosh, rewatching them as an adult was amazing. And that's why I kind of wanted to talk about them. And so that's why we're doing this right now. So real quick, I think maybe I doubt anyone listening to this hasn't actually seen Mad Max, but if for some reason you're listening to this and you haven't seen it, or it's been a while since you've seen the first movie, or you're like some of the people on here and you didn't realize that there was a first movie, just real quick, what is Mad Max? I'm gonna read something real quick. I'm gonna shotgun through it. So Mad Max is, and I quote, a gothic horror story set in Australia in the near future. Urban society is in terminal decay. The intercity highways have become a nightmare arena for a strange death game between nomad bikers and a handful of young cops in souped-up pursuit cars. Max is a young cop responsible for the death of a crazed biker known as the Night Rider. Max's lady, Jessie, wants him to quit the road. I'm going to keep going, guys. I'm sorry. A game of bikers led by a weird psychopath known as the Toe Cutter chase a young couple into the countryside and tear apart their hot rod in a violent frenzy. Max and his friend Jim Goose come across the aftermath and find one drug-crazed biker left behind called Johnny the Boy. He is released from custody next day on a legal technicality. The Goose is outraged, and he and the boy exchange threats. Later, the Goose dies a terrible death at the hands of the Toe Cutter and Johnny the Boy. Max quits the force and opts for the peace of traveling the country road with Jessie and the baby, until chance unwittingly brings them into conflict with the Toe Cutter, launching a new era of violence and revenge. Now, there's a reason I read that. So what I just read was actually the synopsis from the back of a home video
Wow.
release.
Do they leave anything?
Which, first of all, I don't think the person who wrote this understood their job.
No, no. Clearly did not know what the word synopsis means.
Yeah, that is literally the yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I would have even needed to watch the movie.
But yeah, so I think that's a good summary of the
I'm
plot at least.
surprised he didn't include music and sound effects while he was at it.
They had a
Yeah, no,
future
seriously, you're
Wikipedia
not
plot
wrong.
writing.
No, I just thought that was kind of funny. And I will also note this. I think this is a British scan of a British VHS tape that I found, and it does it does advertise that it features the original Australian dialogue. Because as Bill mentioned, this movie wasn't actually released in the U.S. with the original voices until I think like 2000.
And it was bad voiceover. It sounded to me like somebody who was auditioning for
Well,
Batman.
the funny thing is, like
That's
you
really the
mentioned, like there's a
feeling
lot
I
of
got
stuff
from
that
watching.
is kind of hard to understand what they're saying, but for the most part, like it's not really indecipherable. And they, they would even change like when someone said like "oi," they would change it to like "hey." As I don't know, very very needless.
No, it's not train
Exactly.
spotting, or even the subtitles are hard to understand. I mean, yeah, it's fine. It's the woman I hadn't really understood before what the constant police that droning that woman 1984-esque just saying, all the various things that are which and not having caught that to me I actually kind of liked because it sort of gave a sense of this is a society kind of collapsing here. And you've got, they're giving edicts over the radio because that's what you do as it all goes to hell. And so it did give it a little bit of that Australia's beginning to crumble, and these are the last people on top of the roof as the helicopters come
The other
down.
thing I picked up from that was
So I
also
like that.
when Max finally goes mad at the end, it's the cops are aware that he's gone rogue because she mentions that there's a rogue interceptor. And
Yeah.
so I thought even that's like, oh wow, I didn't even that didn't even register the first time I saw it.
Yeah, so I think that synopsis pretty much named like 90% of the characters in the movie, but I figured we'd start with kind of going through and talking about actors and their performances and the characters that they play and just like our thoughts on all of that. So I figured we'd start with, I guess, the titular character of Max, played by Mel Gibson. Had anyone heard of this guy before?
I think he's an up and comer as long as he doesn't like go off the deep end and say crazy things. I think he's got a future ahead of him.
So yeah, obviously international superstar and unfortunately international psychopath.
Big time friend of the Jews, I hear.
Oh,
God.
So the first thing I actually didn't realize, Mel Gibson, I didn't realize how young he was when he was.
Oh my God, yes.
He was 23.
Yeah, he was like 22, 23. He hadn't.
He's so young.
He had done one other feature film. He'd done like a couple of soap operas, but he was pretty much plucked off the street by, I guess, Byron Kennedy and George Miller. So yeah, I don't know. Obviously a very iconic character. Obviously, this is kind of the genesis of a character that would have kind of an arc across 4 films. But what do we think of him in this movie, and what do we think of Gibson's performance?
Well, I was the one thing that hit me was it was very much an origin story, very much like a superhero origin story. And watching it, because it takes its time to set up who he is and his motivations. I was wondering, and maybe there's some information about this, whether or not they planned from the get-go that there would be several films after this, or if this was just going to be, we're just doing a one-off exploitation film.
Done.
Yeah, and because it feels very much like you could watch this as your second or third or fourth film and go back and go, oh, cool, that's his motivation. Oh, that's the secret. It's like,
right.
It's watching a secret origin story, and I thought he carried it off well because, like you said, he's just like, he seems like a normal, nice guy, and you can see that change in him, and I think it works really well. I mean, I think
I gotta suspect that they didn't plan on this being part of a series, and if they did, they probably didn't imagine that the next one would be such a quantum leap in epicness. Over this.
Yeah, no. Yeah, but it just happened to work out really well that way.
And,
So.
we're talking what? It was just 2 years later that the Road Warrior came out, though. So they must have. And I know Mad Max was a huge hit everywhere except for the United States.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why it was just the Road Warrior when they released it here for the second one, as opposed to Mad Max 2 Road
Right.
Warrior.
Right.
So.
So yeah, and I don't think, like, in conceiving of this character, I don't think that they really thought of it as, a franchise character. I mean, keep in mind, so just a little background of the movie. I mean, this was like a very, very indie film. George Miller, and who directed it, and Byron Kennedy, who produced it, and they worked on the story for, like, I think 4 or 5 years, and they were actually like doctors basically who were just kind of cinemaphiles and decided that they wanted to make a movie. So this was something they had I guess kind of worked on developing for years, but I don't think it was they weren't professional filmmakers, and it wasn't something that they were thinking of as, a franchise multi film arc character.
Yeah, it worked out well though.
Yeah.
Because the character eventually becomes very, like, by the time we hit Fury Road, the character is very much a mythic character. Like,
Oh,
he could have no background. He could have, it's like, what's his mysterious background? Well, we see it exactly what it is.
And he's just a man. He's just
Yeah.
a regular man, which they do at the beginning of Road Warrior. Max the man, and he really was just, I mean, a good cop, a good driver, but there was nothing special about him. Beyond being good at his job. He could be just as easily Dirty Harry or something. And by the end of Road Warrior, he's gone from the hero to the legend. I'd argue by the end of Beyond Thunderdome, he's now kind of approaching almost like myth, where the children are speaking of this character in the past. He's become like a Paul Bunyan character. And then Fury Road has, the only movie that has more allusions to Jesus is The Passion of the Christ. I mean, incidentally,
Yeah.
and let's give Gibson his credit. I mean, look, he's a madman, but he's a genius. He is a great director. Apocalypto is an amazing movie. The Passion is an amazing movie, and the balls that it would take. Can anyone else? You go to a studio, it's like, I'd like to spend an incredible amount of money to make a movie about Jesus, and like, okay, yeah, he's pretty popular. His books sold a lot, and I'm gonna do it in the original Aramaic language. You're like, what? Does anyone still speak that? No, but that's what Jesus would have done. And what would Jesus do? Well, he would speak in Aramaic, and they're like, that's insane. It's incredibly insane, but brilliantly made. Also created the Tinsley transfer to show all the scarring and everything on the back. So we owe a lot of good special effects to that movie because it's brutal. Braveheart, ripping yarn. Okay, is it historically accurate? No. Who gives a rat's ass? It's a fun story. He's really good at this, and he plays great characters. Now, would I want my sister to marry him? Yeah, but okay. But only because I'd get so much cool stuff out of it and probably get to go to shows and things and fly around. But no, I really wouldn't. I mean, he seems pretty unstable. But you wouldn't know it from this. He's a good actor. He's not given a whole lot to do, except look impressive and show some pain and everything. But I thought he actually kind of underplayed the role.
Yeah.
Compared to the way he is in the other, I think he really grew as an actor very quickly. I mean, it was just a couple of years later, a year later, he's doing Gallipoli.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
You're Living Dangerously too, right?
Yeah, and again, if you can overlook his personal issues, his personal demons, he is a good actor. He really is. He plays a wide variety, and in some sense, kind of fell into cliche with the Lethal Weapon movies. Starts kind of doing shtick and everything. But I mean, those movies combined probably made about $1 trillion. So I guess it's pretty good shtick.
Yeah, well, it's funny that you mentioned, not being a whole lot to not being given a whole lot to work with, because I think that, as much as I love this movie and I love the script and everything, the characters are definitely not the best drawn. So I think that the movie kind of leans on the skill of the actors a whole lot, and I think as a leading man, I think he definitely has he displays the charisma that made him a superstar in this movie, and that kind of helps carry the character. I don't know, Renee, Alan, I know the three of us have been doing a lot of talking. Do you guys have
blah
any,
blah 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 blah.
any
No.
any thoughts on on Gibson or Max?
I was just going to say I appreciated in the beginning that, you know, they had a lot of peeks of him. You were seeing him from behind or from a side angle, and you never got a full shot of his face till about 12 minutes in. And I really kind of appreciated the buildup they did. And total speculation, I have no reason to know anything about this, but I think they did plan for sequels.
Well, yeah. There's when we get to the kind of like the screenwriting, I guess, portion. There is some interesting stuff I read about that. This is definitely not the movie that they originally wanted, I think, to make. And apparently, George Miller was lucky that it did so well because he actually hated the movie and basically kind of thought as Road Warrior as a do-over. Yeah, but and I do. Yeah, you mentioned that the intro. I love the fact that it's played as like a really badass intro. But it's just him fixing his car. He's like doing some road service on his Interceptor while this car chase is going on. But yeah, I do love that intro and the music beats where it's like dun.
Yeah, it was great.
The music is a little over the top.
Oh, very much. We'll talk about that.
Keep in mind, it is an exploitation film. I mean,
Yes.
all in all, it's a low budget action exploitation. I mean, it opens with two people having sex in the middle of the grass, or for nothing.
Paul, it is an Ozploitation film.
Sorry, yes, Ozploitation film.
You gotta Ozploitation. Yeah. No, it actually is, and Brian May, the guy who did the music, he also did the music for the Road Warrior, but he had worked on a lot of other Australian movies and a lot of other Ozploitation movies that are pretty great. And the other kind of interesting thing about him is he definitely doesn't start like I think someone mentioned that, you know, you see his character arc, and he definitely doesn't start off as you know, if anything, like Goose is kind of like the loose cannon on the Force. I think
it's true.
Yeah, like Goose is the one, you know, Max is holding Goose back, right? Like and I think that like the if there's anything that's overplayed that I wish that they would have changed was the fact that they do kind of play him they play him up as the ultimate badass, not necessarily on screen. You do see him kind of like, you know, obviously eventually get the Knight Rider in the first kind of chase, but there are all these, you know, they have the, when he comes in, they have the V8 Interceptor, and you find out that it was basically they were going to give it to him to like bribe him to stay on the Force, and he keeps trying to quit, and the chief Fifi is like, oh no, you know, you got to stay. But I thought that was kind of funny because ultimately, like, he doesn't really do, like, if anything, Goose seems like the real badass.
No, he chases a couple guys on motorcycles. The one badass thing he does is get in the game of chicken with the Knight Rider, and the Knight Rider chickens out. But that just makes him crazy. Not a particularly good cop. I mean, you can only do that so many times before you play a game with someone who's just as nuts as you are, and you both die in a head-on crash. So we didn't see him do amazing stunts or amazing things or anything. Not to the degree that we see. I mean, by the time of Thunderdome, he's flying through the air on giant rubber bands.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the reason he was so valuable was because he was just good and straight to the books, and they could count on him not being a loose cannon. I don't know. Hey, Alan, you've been quiet. This is the first.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Well, yeah, I was just gathering all my thoughts about
in a big basket.
No, so I mean, so my thoughts on Mel Gibson. You know, this was, I don't know if you consider this sort of his breakout film.
Oh, this is 100% the film that like really like led him on the path of stardom. Like Bill said. Oh yeah, sorry. No, real quick. One other thing. What like Bill said. This movie was actually like, it was an indie film, but it made like $100 million worldwide. It was a massive hit. It actually for like 20 years held the record of being like the most profitable film ever. So yeah, wow. This was definitely the thing that made him like an international star. But sorry, so go ahead, Alan.
Well, no, what I was saying is like if I didn't know who he was, and you said, okay, look at all the people in this film and tell me who you think is going to be a big star. I mean, he would have probably had less of a percentage than someone else. You know, I mean, it just doesn't seem like, well, you hear about people how they do the, it's their first big movie or whatever, and they just knock it out of the park. It's like, oh my gosh, we have to see them in another film. I didn't get that from Mel Gibson in this film.
I see what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing about Mel Gibson, okay, and maybe you guys can answer this because me and the person I was watching this with, we were discussing this. What do you say Mel Gibson is? Do you say he's American or Australian?
He's Australian.
Technically he is an American. He is American born. He was actually born in New York, but he moved to Australia, I think, when he was like, a kid. So he is. And he
Because
does.
I looked it up
I always
when we
thought
were
he was born in
discussing it.
Australia, moved to the U.S., and then
No,
went
no,
back to Australia when he was
No,
older.
yeah. So it's funny because this is exactly the discussion we had. I'm like, hey, he's Australian. He's like, no, he's American. So
He's
anyway,
an American who
we,
sounds Australian. So he could
well,
run
I
for
looked it up.
president
He
if he hadn't
moved to
already lost
Australia
Florida.
when he was 12. So
Yeah.
but I had seen him do interviews and he spoke with an Australian accent. And my friend said, oh,
Yeah.
he was just faking it. He's like, listen to
Like
one of
Madonna.
some other interview. And it's true. If you look at other interviews, sometimes he speaks English and sometimes it's Australian. So I have no idea. I just know that if like most people, if they stay somewhere until they are 12, they would sort of, retain their accent. So I have no idea. We may even have to ask him what he considers himself. But
We'll get him
Yeah.
on
make
here.
it to
I mean,
12 years old, I don't know. I would think that you would have the American accent.
Well, the thing is, apparently American accents are pretty easy to pull off because they keep having these, the guy who plays like Rick on Walking Dead, he sounds totally American on the show, but then you hear an interview, he sounds like Henry Higgins. I mean, so
Yeah.
apparently English people from, British people can really fake us very well. Whereas when we fake them, we sound like, Monty Python or something.
Oh, when I was in college, there was we had these English people that worked at the radio station, and I would always try to imitate them. And I asked the girl, I said, "So, tell me truly, how is my English accent? Do I sound like an English person?" And she said, in the greatest English accent ever, she's like, "Actually, you sound like a gay English person." And I was like, "Okay, I'll stop doing the English
There you are.
accent." So
You
yeah,
found your
so,
niche.
There you go. Well, I think actually with him, it's a little bit of what they call code switching. So I mean, people do that anyway. I mean, you find sometimes depending on who you're talking to, you can switch. You can just not a heavy or not intentional, but very slowly slide into it. So like I know that when I go to our local garage, which is it's a very country garage, and I kind of slide my language kind of slides a little bit more into more of a country tone, even though I grew up in Maryland, right? And then most of the time I'm talking, it's mid-Atlantic states, but every
when you
once
say
in a while,
garage, do you mean like, give me one of them there Johnson rods?
I don't really say that to them, but
That
yeah,
kind of garage, like a car garage?
yes, a car garage mechanic.
Yeah.
So
No, I get
so
what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you it could very well be that whatever when he talks normally, it just depends. In different people, when you're talking to different people, you will find
Yeah.
that you kind of tailor your speech sometimes to who you're talking
Yeah,
to.
it's like if I'm talking to someone else who's from New York, I tend to talk faster and use big words so they don't think I'm from North Carolina.
and I have
Send your letters to Bill Mulligan, care of. Yeah.
I have watched interviews with him from like the early 80s, and he definitely has the accent. So maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe, he moved out to Hollywood in the mid 80s or whatever and lost it eventually. Or, maybe he just like tried to drop it intentionally. So he was
Right.
like,
He didn't want to keep
marketable, I
doing
don't
it.
know.
Well, to be honest, the only time I had seen Mel Gibson outside of a movie was I think he hosted Saturday Night Live like back in the 80s.
Hmm.
And he spoke with an Australian accent. So I was basing everything I knew about him on that.
Yeah. Oh wait, so you said outside of the movies though, not outside of this.
Right.
Okay.
Because I know in the movies, he does normally an American accent.
Yeah. But yeah, no,
That's
I
where the
think,
money is.
yeah, my guess, I mean, at the time he was considered an Australian actor too, so it wasn't like he was an American actor or an American that had moved to Australia. He grew up there, so I think he was kind of considered Australian by the time
I
he
mean,
moved
most
there.
Australian actors can probably trace their ancestry back to not Australia without having to go too far back.
That's very true. Yeah.
This
good.
did start the Mel Gibson gets hurt stuff with his knee getting blown off. He does get injured a lot. I mean, South Park made great fun of that Mel Gibson tends to get tortured in his movies.
Oh yeah.
And once you're aware of it, it does kind of crop up a lot.
Oh, what were we gonna say, Alan?
I was just going to say, like, I was writing things down as you guys were talking about them. So I was going to bring them up.
Oh yeah.
Bill had mentioned about just other movies that he had directed and stuff, and the Passion of the Christ. I remember when I watched that, I thought it was the dumbest thing ever. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're gonna speak in Aramaic. Nobody's gonna understand it. It's all gonna be in subtitles. And then after I watched it, I'm like, that actually worked really well. It didn't really have to be Aramaic. They could have spoken in any language that I didn't understand, and I would have gotten the same thing out of the dialogue. But when someone speaks in a foreign language, it almost, for me at least, it avoids me associating their voice with the character. In this case, like real people. So well, I can't pronounce his last name. Was it Jim Cazziel? Whoever
Jim
played
Caviezel.
Jesus.
Yeah, Jim
Yes.
Caviezel.
Oh wow.
It avoided me associating his voice with Jesus in like
Hmm.
in life.
Huh.
Because it's not something that I understand. I mean, but if he would have spoken American or whatever they would do, I don't know. You would, I mean, you associate, especially if that was somebody's first, I don't know, introduction, to biblical characters, you would associate that voice with that person, kind of like the way we all associate, Moses with like this deep voiced guy with a long white
Yeah.
beard. When in reality, who knows what Moses sounded like?
Well, I think it was a brilliant move because I think the fundamental problem with playing Jesus is what should his accent sound like? What is God's accent? And usually it would be he kind of speaks with a British accent because we associate that with acting and being smart. But that seems kind of it always bothered me when I'm watching a World War II movie and the Germans are speaking English with a German accent. And you're like, well, okay, I
Yeah.
guess that kind of makes sense, them being German, but not as much sense as them actually speaking German. They're
Yeah.
speaking perfect British English with a slight German tinge. I mean, it doesn't take me entirely out of the movie, but I like it better now when they now that there's been more of an effort of using subtitles well and making it so that we can actually read them.
Yeah.
So,
All I know is I've only watched Passion of the Christ without subtitles, and I still
oh,
have no idea what that movie's about. So maybe
really?
someone can
I
explain
can
to me
explain the
sometime.
plot to you.
Yeah. Anyways, if we don't have any other thoughts right now on Old Mel, I think we can move on. Speaking of his kind of happy domestic life, we have his wife Jessie, played by Joanne Samuel, I think. Never been in anything else I've ever seen. She's
Hmm.
like many of the other actors in this movie, she was Australian. Obviously, she has a lot of credits. In fact, she had more credits than she had more like screen acting experience than Mel Gibson did when this movie was made. But I don't think she ever really broke out of like Australian TV and film. I don't know. What do you guys think about her performance?
I thought it was a nice, natural performance. She was likable without. She's not a bombshell. I like it when they cast people who don't have necessarily movie star gorgeous looks, but they're good looking people. Making a nice contrast to the other people. One thing I like about Australian movies, they're kind of like the Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns. Not at all afraid to cast really unusually looking people to play small roles. If there's a guy at the train station who's going to take the tickets, he's going to be a character. He's going to be someone, a face for radio. Good stuff. But I thought she was very nice. It was believable. They were a likable couple. The scene where
Yeah.
we're just like seeing them saying sweet things to each other and everything. It seemed believable. It didn't seem forced. So is she a drop dead bombshell? No, but I think she's a very attractive woman. I think she gave a very good performance. And so you felt bad when something bad happened to her. And that was basically her role, I guess, is to be in peril.
No, I mean,
Um,
what I'm interested in is because I've seen this number of times and pretty much knew what her fate was going to be. So I watched her performance just sort of with that in mind, and only kind of took her in again as she was there to be eventually be a victim, even though she like knees toe cutter and gets away from him,
mhm.
and she handles herself well, and she's in the movie for 2/3 of the movie, 3/4 of the movie. So I'm curious in terms of Renee and Alan, what like how you perceived her, because Zach, Bill, and I have all kind of knew what her fate was
Yeah.
and watched it with going, well, she's destined to be run over. So I was, wondering what if you guys like in terms of her performance or anything like that.
I agree with Bill. It seemed very natural. It was a little awkward in the beginning with the saxophone solo. That really threw me
I was
off.
gonna say that was the best part of the character. For me, sax.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the scene with the ice cream cone with Tokoto. That was really great. It was a really natural performance. If I can, I was a little bit more slightly attached to her than I was the baby. If we want to make the baby an extension of her, I don't know what was up with that kid. It was there, then it wasn't there.
Grog. Grog was
yeah.
the baby.
I was literally
Yeah.
that I wasn't gonna mention him, but since you bring it up, yeah, many scenes with them together, like frolicking in the fields or swimming in the river. Where's the goddamn baby? I
Yes.
completely
Yeah.
forgot
Well, in fact,
about
when the
that.
baby goes missing, that's the thing. It's just like she had been swimming for a long time, and like,
Yeah.
was anybody watching Sprog? And I really regret the fact that I did not name either of my two sons Sprog.
Oh,
There's still time. I think
I
legally there's
missed
still
that.
time,
yeah.
Paul.
That's why your kids
missed
still
that,
love
you
you.
know.
You didn't do that. I mean,
Well, maybe if I can get grandbabies, I can convince them
oh,
to name them
Yeah.
Sprog.
I hope they're listening so they know not to ask you now.
Yeah. And then by the end, I was screaming at the screen. And then that happened, and I was like, well, I'm sorry, but come on. You're running right down the middle of the road. What are you
Yeah, right.
doing? So,
Also, I'm not really clear what exactly they did, because if someone's running down the road and you're on a motorcycle and you hit them head on, you're both going down.
you would think.
Motorcycles are not like those things that you use to flatten pavement. I mean, but it was very effective. I mean, it was a great shot. If you
Well, the shoe
obviously
went
they
It's
didn't have the
really,
money
it's
to
iconic.
actually, it's iconic. Yeah, the shoe going off. I mean, oh my God, that's just so. That's like in any movie when you see some little kid holding a doll. It's like,
Yeah.
oh God, something bad's going to happen, and we're going to see that doll lying in the rubble with maybe a little bit of blood on it or something. I mean, but yeah, really well. That was really well done. I
Oh,
also
speaking of
love
things,
the part with
the
the hand.
baby was actually like playing with his gun at one point when they're in the
Jeez.
house. The
That's
baby
the other
has
thing.
like the
There's
gun,
one
like
shot where
playing.
they cut away to the baby with a revolver.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
probably how a lot of Australians get
remember
raised.
because I was like, I said, is the baby playing with a gun? I don't, they don't really like do it anymore. But I was like, well, maybe it was a toy gun, but it really looked real.
I think it was.
And
I think it was supposed to be.
Let's
yeah,
not get our
anyway, I
pants in a
guess-
wad. The safety was on. Okay, come on, folks.
Well,
No.
actually, speaking of Jessie, the character, I forgot that she actually survives. I mean, not very
Yes.
well, but
That's actually something else I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting for a film franchise that George Miller obviously cared about continuity. There's a weird relationship between the films in the sense that sometimes it's kind of hard to figure out, like how far apart they are,
Right.
where the character's been in between. But he does care about continuity, obviously. Like in the beginning of in the Road Warrior, he has a leg brace from where he got shot. But yeah, no, I forgot because she's still alive and she's
She
never mentioned
survived.
again.
Well, I'm
Very
thinking
weird.
if they were planning a sequel, if they were thinking far enough ahead that there would be a sequel, it would kind of make sense that the sequel would be him taking care of his crippled wife. They're living through this tragedy, and in Death Wish form, something comes back. Maybe they only killed a couple of the gang members, so there's a whole gang out there that might be looking for
that's
revenge.
true.
And apparently, the continent of Australia is not big enough for these people not to run into each other repeatedly over and over again. So, that
Yeah.
probably would have been the way to go. But luckily, this movie made so much money, they came back and gave him a bucket load of it and say, "What can you make with this?" And we got the Road Warrior.
Yeah, my theory is she got major reconstructive surgery and became the humongous in Road Warrior. But
Ooh,
that's just a fan theory.
wow.
No,
It's headcanon now. That's
no, I actually really
the
like
only thing that I even remember, the only thing I even remember about her character is, I mean, she was playing the one again. I thought that her role, she didn't really have a whole lot to work with. We were just sort of following him around. Is what Bill just said. The main scene that I remember is, hey, he's going to the store that's like a mile away, and the gang's there. It's like, is this Australia or is it just like a little island?
go very far afield for their vacation. Maybe they
Yeah.
just kind of went down. It went to local locally. So
No, I think that's one point. That's probably like one of the laziest parts of
Yeah.
the plot, but I think I kind of overlook it just because I don't know, thematically they are kind of, it's the roads are dangerous and the gangs are everywhere, and you're nowhere is safe. But yeah, I
I figured
actually
they were
really
kind
like
of
her.
following him, but
Yeah. No, that's what
And maybe they
that's
were
how I
looking for him,
remembered
but
it.
they didn't make that
Yeah.
clear.
But no, I actually really liked her performance. I think, like other people have pointed out, there's not a whole lot to the character. I think she does a really, good job with what she has. I think she has good chemistry with Mel Gibson. I think she has a couple of good beats. The scene where she's in the woods is probably, there's not a whole lot of tension in this movie. There's not a whole lot of suspense, but that scene is very suspenseful. Just the whole sequence where she's going down to the beach, and you don't know, you know that they're gonna get her, but you don't know when. And then I think the I don't know, the one moment that always sticks with me is when they get her back to the house, and she's sitting down on the couch, and there's like a beat there where it's like 15 or 20 seconds, and it's just very quiet, and she's relaxing, she's settling down, and then all of a sudden she pops up, and she remembers that the kid's still
She
out.
has a baby.
Yeah.
That was a little odd.
Yeah. Well, she's in shock, and the baby could protect himself. The baby has a gun.
He does have a gun.
Cool. So, if no one else has any thoughts on her, I think we can move on to one of my personal favorites, Jim Goose, played by Steve Beasley. Now, interestingly enough, Steve Beasley was actually, I guess, friends or an acquaintance of Mel Gibson. Gibson had been in one other movie. He had one other feature film credit called Summer City, which also starred Steve Beasley. And I think they may have like auditioned kind of for this movie, not together, but I think they both kind of went in together for their roles. I have a lot of thoughts on Goose, but I don't know, what one of you guys want to kick us off?
He's
Well, let
got
me
more
talk since I'm
personality than
back
me.
and I make it
Oh,
dropped
you're
at any
great.
point.
Perfect. Go for it.
But yeah, Goose was by far the most entertaining character to me. We talked about who did you think was going to have, a lot of success after this. I would have probably chose that character just because he was my favorite character. I mean, I liked when he, he got run off the road with his motorcycle, and that guy was there, and he borrowed his truck, like this old beat up, and almost wrecks. And it doesn't even go a mile on it and gets rough.
I think we're losing you, Alan.
Yeah.
Well, Alan, we'll see if you can get back in, but yeah, anyone else have thoughts on?
But good points, Alan. The ones we could hear.
Yeah.
It was like Passion of the Christ. I didn't understand it, but I kind of knew what he was saying.
You got the gist of it.
Yeah.
No, but I think what he was saying
really-
was true.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I enjoyed Goose. I think his character obviously was great. He was very enjoyable. And it reminded me a lot of another Goose that we might all know and love.
Say is that their destiny.
Yeah. But, best friend, blonde hair, tragic ending.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, who are you thinking about?
You're not. Oh my God.
Wow.
Top Gun.
Oh, sorry.
Goose?
Sorry. No, yeah. Okay.
I haven't even seen the
I'm
movie
back.
and I knew that.
I'm back.
Yeah. That's sad. No, I agree. He was
Yay.
fun. Yay.
Yeah,
He was fun, and he had a lot of personality, and I would have liked to have seen more. They should have made this more of a buddy picture where one of the buddies gets taken out, and Goose is trying to get him to, stay on the force because they're having a lot of fun together, and Goose seems to be enjoying life. And then that makes what happens to him all the more tragic. And I remember the first time I saw this, the scene where he goes in the hospital really that hit me hard, because I've worked in VA hospitals and stuff, and the burn ward. If you want to find out if you have a soul, just sort of walk around the burn ward and then go someplace and weep for a bit. And it's brutal. So they were subtle what they showed and everything. Somehow I remembered as seeing more, that like there was a flash or something, a subliminal flash of seeing a really messed up face, but the hand was enough, I guess. And
yeah,
but I mean, I think that speaks to actually how it was shot, is that you remember seeing that when it wasn't there. That
like all the people who
suggestion
swear they saw Rosemary's Baby when they never showed it,
Yeah.
That's another interesting thing going back and watching this movie. Like we were talking about the scene where Jesse dies, and then the scene with the goose. That for a film that is kind of regarded as a very violent and somewhat nasty movie, this is actually, there's a lot of action, there's a lot of car action, but in terms of like gore and like damage to like people being shown on screen, there's actually very little of it. I think you see Mel Gibson's leg get shot, but
Yeah.
that's probably the most violent thing that actually
And that
happened on
makes it
screen.
more shocking in a way. And here's a movie that probably doesn't get compared to Mad Max a lot, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
When you see it, you realize, oh my god, I heard this was the goriest, bloodiest, nastiest thing ever. And the single bloodiest scene in the movie is when a guy like cuts his thumb. Or there is
Yeah.
a scene where a guy drops a chainsaw on his leg, and that's the only bit. Everything else is with suggestion. And I don't want to sound like, and in my day we had a little thing called suspense, but really the power of suggestion can be really well done if it's done well. But of course, nowadays people kind of demand more, and they tend to get it. But yeah, it's not very bloody.
Oh, even to the point of when the couple in the hot rod get attacked,
Yes.
and they grab the woman, and very clearly she was sexually assaulted. You can tell,
Yeah.
but they don't show it. They cut to
They
the
after
crow or the raven, and that's it. And it's what happened. There's no reason to show
Right.
it. I'm not a prude or anything, but it was really well done, because it was like, look, we've made our point.
Right. You can when you see how she is, you can imagine how many bad things happen to her. You don't have to see them all. Then it just becomes gratuitous and kind of nasty to watch. You don't need to be beaten over the head with it. And also you're seeing it the way the cops see it. You're seeing the way they come in and they see the aftermath and make the same assumptions you do. And so it makes you angry that these people get away with it.
It's funny too, because you mentioned, working in a burn ward and actually seeing that sort of thing in real life. Like I said, George Miller and Byron Kennedy, that were doctors, they had seen a lot of this stuff, and they were even up to the point where they were raising money for the film. They were working as like van medics, so I'm sure that they were seeing a ton of stuff like on the road that was just horrific. But ultimately, like, that wasn't what they were interested in dwelling on or showing. And I think the movie, it stands the test of time in the sense that it's not as exploitative as it could be. And when you watch it now, it doesn't feel like you're kind of a voyeur into something that you don't want to be watching.
Yeah.
But anyways, getting back to Goose. Yeah, I love the Goose. Definitely one of my favorite characters. Some of his lines, I think, when he first shows up and he's on the bike and he kind of slides into the motorhome, almost hits it, and then the guy's like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "I don't know. I just got here myself." I don't know. He's hilarious. He's got I think he had been a little bit more of a seasoned screen actor than Mel Gibson too at that point. So he had a little more experience. But yeah, dude, I love him. I love him so much. I'm trying to think. There are a couple other scenes that now aren't coming to mind. But oh yeah, the scene where they do find the couple and they find the girl in the car, and he just he's trying to he's trying to approach her, and he's just like, I'm Jim Goose and I'm here to help. And he's just, I don't know, there's something very reassuring about his character. He is like kind of a hard badass, when he's trying to attack the Johnny the boy. And obviously he's not afraid to tussle, but there is kind of a soft side to him.
Yeah. Who played the station chief? What was his character's name?
Oh yeah, no, I think he was just called the station master. Was played by an actor named Reg Evans, who I think I didn't put him on here. He's kind of a minor role. We can also talk about anyone else, but he's, like you were saying, he's definitely I think the term is casting mugs, and I don't even know if that's what he was doing here, but he's one of those characters that has a very unique look.
Yeah. I just had the feeling when I'm watching him, I'm thinking, this is like who Lord Humongous was before everything went to hell.
Yes.
Like I always kind of felt that Lord Humongous had to have an interesting backstory, and maybe he was a cop. He and Max just seemed to be on the same wavelength. That's what Max could have become.
Yeah,
he went a different direction.
I kind of want to talk. Yeah, I kind of want to talk when we get. I've kind of broken it up here through like the kind of protagonists and villains, but I want to talk about that a little more because that's a very interesting. Like his villains are almost more interesting and better written than his heroes. So yeah, someone else. I didn't actually. I think I skipped him on the list I sent you guys, but I think it's also worth mentioning Roger Ward, who played Fifi, the kind of I guess he's the chief of the main patrol force. I don't know exactly. I don't think they ever like say his rank or anything, but he's like the big bald guy.
No,
Who's
that's
always
who I
trying
was
to.
thinking of.
Yeah,
That's who I meant. The head of the cop.
Sorry. I
Yeah,
thought
yeah, okay.
I thought you were talking about the other. Yeah. I thought because there's a guy who's the guy at the train station is named Station Master.
Oh, the train
Oh,
station. Yeah,
no,
no.
Lord,
sorry.
you wait. You think I looked at him and said that's Lord Humongous? What did he take
Well,
steroids and go
yeah,
on a low carb diet?
Well,
Yeah,
your
yeah.
reaction.
I didn't know where you were going with that, but I was just gonna let it.
But you're just gonna let it go. It's like, wow, he's been taking drugs. Bill's been huffing Armorall.
I was like, sure.
Yeah.
Now, which
no,
one was
okay.
Max again? I think I've gotten lost.
Yeah.
I
What
didn't
Arnold
know that
Stang
guy.
wasn't available. Okay. Yeah.
Well, see, I found it interesting that Fifi apparently wore leather pants and no shirt on his day off.
Oh, I love everything about his character. The way he dresses, I don't. Yeah, I love the fact that he's on his day off, he's in there like tending to his plants. Yeah, no, love Roger Ward. So he was another Australian actor born in 1936 and apparently still acting to this day. So he's like in
God love him.
his 80s now.
Well, death fears him, as it well should.
Well, to your point, I think he actually was often cast as like villains in a lot of exploitation films.
You
Yeah,
think?
believe it or not.
Yeah.
But I love him in this movie because he is actually, I don't know, he's kind of a teddy bear, and I kind of love him.
Well, his name is Fifi, but
yeah,
no one ever makes a joke about it because
Exactly.
would you?
Yeah, I love, even though I don't love the whole, I think the whole thing with him like trying to get like Max to stay on is it's kind of inexplicable, but I do love that every time he has a scene with him, he's like, oh, come on, Max. We'll show. He has that line where he's like, we'll show the world that, they're still heroes. Yeah, love him. Does anyone else have any thoughts on Fifi?
Not really.
Cool. And then I think that's pretty much it. The only
I
other
think I just want to emphasize. I think
yeah.
he would have been almost as good a Lord Humongous as Reg Evans, the station master.
Almost. All right. Well, moving on. I think the only other two characters I think I really wanted to mention for kind of the heroes, and they're not really in there very much at all, but Charlie and Roop, the two guys at the beginning of the movie. Roop is the one kind of spying on the couple. Not a whole lot to say about them. I love their whole shtick throughout the first starting chase, where their car is getting progressively more and more smashed up, and
So
they're
are
doing
they.
the whole. They're doing the whole buddy cop thing where they're trying to fight over who's driving, and I don't know. I just love them. I don't know if anyone else has any opinions, but I just wanted to mention them.
Well, I thought it was interesting that
Enjoyed them
it
too.
ends with that with is it Roop who gets his throat torn?
That's Charlie.
Yeah.
Charlie gets his throat torn, and then so you're thinking, oh shit, he's dead, and they're and there's like, nope, he's like a couple of scenes later, he's there with the voice box. It's like, which kind of sits there and goes, wow, this is that rough a society that after getting mutilated like that, he's patched up and back with the force
working.
like not much long after.
And also I've always loved that gimmick, the electronic voice box thing. That is just so cool. And if it ever happened to me, make lemonade out of lemons. I would see if there's any way they could make it sound like Vincent Price in Dr. Five. And I would continue teaching till the day I died, to be able to just go in front of the students and not move my lips and just glare at them. And my voice is coming out like Dr. Five's. Like I would wake up every morning with a smile on my face. Yay, I get to go to work.
Yeah. Apparently, also an interesting piece of trivia that I read. So, despite the entire film being dubbed for the American release, apparently his lines when he's using that voice box was one of the few things that actually wasn't dubbed. Oddly enough. So, yeah, cool. Well, I think it's time, if we don't have any other kind of protagonist or heroes we want to talk about, kind of move on to the baddies.
Yeah.
And Lord knows there are a lot of them, so I don't think we need to cover all of them. But obviously, we do need to talk about Toe Cutter, who is, again, I think arguably the best written and possibly the best acted character in the entire film. What do you guys think?
I wouldn't say he's the most subtly acted character, but
oh Lord, no.
No, but he's a fun character, definitely, and he has like a constantly changing accent as well. Like he'll do it intentionally. Like he'll use like a different accent each time almost.
He has like a constant like affectation.
Yeah.
I should point out that he was played by Keays-Byrne, who was I think he was technically a British actor. Apparently, he was actually born in India, but then he moved to Australia. I think he moved to Australia to pursue acting, but I may have that note wrong because I don't know who would move to Australia to pursue acting. But yeah, I think you're right. I love his constant, like he's basically always putting on a show.
Yes,
I love it.
That's what makes him a great villain. He's one of those characters who's aware that he's putting on a performance, so he puts on a good one. It's Shakespearean. It's over the top. It's like, when you watch Richard III, he knows he's a villain. He loves being a villain. He somehow senses that there's an audience out there even when he's alone, and he's performing for them. It's great. It's just one of those characters. It's like when you watch a Civil War movie and the way the people speak, it's like they know that everything they say is being written down, for posterity. So they're making sure that it's really good. He's a great villain. Now, in the Mad Max series, he is the most low key of all the villains,
True.
Yes.
which
Believe it or
tells
not,
you
yeah.
what a turn for the rafters they went in the subsequent movies. But he's great. He's great, and I was so delighted to find out about 3 seconds before the podcast started that he played Emotin Joe. I didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
Oh,
Look,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
wearing a
yeah.
lot of makeup, and it's been many years. Okay, so you didn't know it either.
He
Yeah,
has the
see?
same hair though, so
He does.
That's true.
He
Hmm.
does.
But what I like, actually, the one of the scenes I liked best with him, and Renee, you talked about the ice cream scene. Right before that, when she's getting the ice cream, he's following her. Like during that scene, when he has the toy that he's like jingling in front of the baby, and
Mm.
like trying like play, and it's just so it's menacing, but that kind of menacing, like where it's like, no, I'm just being nice, But that whole part right there is so creepy from him, and just I love that whole bit with him and the baby, and just like jingling the little keys or whatever he had. And it was just like, oh, he's so. I find that creepier than when he's licking the ice cream cone. Even. It's
Yeah.
just
So that's actually I want to mention something there since you brought it up. I think the overall the thing that is kind of menacing about the bikers and the gang is obviously they are kind of they don't really want anything other than to create chaos, but
Yeah.
they are also like they are unpredictable. They are like a wild dog that it might let you pet it, but
Right.
eventually it will turn on you and bite you. And you see something similar in earlier scenes when you're first introduced to them, and they kind of roll into town. Lots of weird. I don't think we need to talk about all of them individually, but just the overall weirdness of all of the bikers. There are a
Mhm.
couple of them that they're always like dancing, or they're doing these like I don't know. There's just a lot of weird like
Yeah.
background stuff
Yes.
going on. And then there's the scene where like the second scene where they're in the town, and I guess a couple of townies are kind of like, I don't know, hanging out with them. And one of the bikers, like, they're just standing around, and one of the bikers takes like a milkshake or something and like spits it through the straw into the guy's face. And then
Yeah.
that escalates in about like 30 seconds to them like dragging him behind the car.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just
It
like
escalates.
yeah.
0 to 60.
Right.
And I think that's the scary thing about them is they're obviously evil and they're obviously dangerous, but they
Right.
don't always come off that way immediately. So it's
Right.
like one of those like, oh, am I gonna survive this encounter? Am I gonna get out okay? Are they gonna strike?
There's also a family element to them that I don't know if I want to go so far as say they love each other, but there is that kind of dog pack mentality. They genuinely mourn Knight Rider. They You get the feeling, is it who's the second in command? That's not Johnny the Boy. Who's the blonde guy? It looks like he should be in a new wave
Mike
rock
Pence.
band.
Who?
Mike
The-
Pence.
No.
Who?
Yeah,
He looks like Mike Pence.
he does. He does kind of look like a post-apocalyptic Mike Pence. No,
Yeah,
you're-
there you
Oh,
are.
Bubba-
yeah, I'll give you that.
the name of the character, I didn't have him on here. The name of the character is Bubba Zanetti, played by Jeff Perry.
Because he seems smarter than the others, and sort of sitting quietly. He's clearly like the second in command, the one that Toe Cutter respects and knows how to handle things better. And then the others, everyone's got their position in the pack, and Johnny the Boy is kind of an idiot that he's trying to maybe bring up. But there is that element, and that seems to be, you think about that, that's kind of true in all the Road Warrior movies. I mean, Lord Humongous genuinely seems to, have a certain degree of affection for, was it Wes or whatever that
Yeah.
character, the other, yeah, and the way Bartertown is run and Master Blaster,
Wait,
between those
sorry,
two,
Bill, who
huh?
who runs Bartertown?
Who runs? Well, Master Blaster,
Okay, just making sure. Sorry, continue.
yeah, and then all the way to Emoten Joe, who again, in his sick, twisted way, I think genuinely loves his boys, his soldiers, and everything. That
Yeah,
these are evil characters, but they're not inhuman, there is humanity within them, which to me makes them far worse. Like people complain when they made like that movie that everybody like makes fun of, the one with Hitler and everything, because it really kind of humanized him. And to me, that makes him infinitely more evil, that Hitler was a person who could love his girlfriend and his dogs and everything else, and yet was capable of doing what he did. If he was just some monster, some one in a generation kind of monster that comes out with no ability, no humanity whatsoever, it's like, okay, well, that's a monster. Kill monsters, whatever. It's scarier to think that a human could become like that than to think that just some random monster could. So I like the little touches of humanity that they bring to these characters.
What I thought about the motorcycle gang is they reminded me. I was like, this is just like another gang that would be in the movie The Warriors, which actually I
yeah,
looked up and it
Yeah.
came out the same
same
year.
year. Yeah,
Ugh,
But yeah,
wow.
that's what I thought of. As soon as Toe Cutter rolled up and had that sort of, it's like exactly what has he done? I think he's like shaved an eyebrow and he's got a little bit of paint or something on his face. It's like, yeah, this is one of the Warriors gangs. I don't know what they call themselves, but it's almost like, deleted scene from the Warriors. There's another gang that we didn't talk about.
yeah.
Sure, that's pretty cool. I didn't even think about that.
I like that.
Yeah, no, and interestingly enough, I think one of the supposedly one of the inspirations for this movie was I guess there was a movie that came out a few years earlier that was about bikers. It was an Australian movie, actually co-starred Keays-Byrne as well. It was called Stone. Apparently, it wasn't very good because I believe Byron Kennedy said that he wanted to basically make a movie like Stone but good. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I think that and biker films, I guess, were big in Australia. Obviously, there had been a lot of that was kind of a subgenre in America, in the 60s and 70s. I know like Roger Corman actually, I think, made a number of like biker films. So this definitely was not the first evil biker gang movie, but I think that the thing that sets it apart from every other film in the genre is just the strangeness and the absurdity, which makes them even more sinister. Also,
Yeah.
the when they see Jesse getting ice cream, and like when you see Toe Cutter and they're doing yoga or something, it's just it's just every scene. That's the thing I love. Every scene. Oh yeah, and when they have the Sprague at the barn and they're like holding him hostage, and there's the one guy up on the building who's just like, I don't know how he's like suspended on the roof, or not on the roof, but on the on the top of the building. I don't know if you guys like caught
Yeah,
that.
he looked like he was crucified. At first, I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
did they crucify somebody? And then no, he just like gets down. He was
yeah.
just hanging out up
It's
there.
so
Yeah, I
every,
remember that scene. It looked like he was suspended in midair, and then and it's like, okay, I'm gonna look and see what's going on. And then the next scene that he's in, or the next shot that he's in, it's like he's sitting in the window. So it's like, oh, they're not gonna show me how they did that.
yeah. Uh, so yeah, I don't know. I just love the fact that there's a lot of attention to detail, and I think we'll get into that also when we talk about like George Miller's style is extremely visual. He originally talked, I think there was a quote about him wanting to just make basically a silent movie. So obviously his attention to detail in every scene is pretty impressive. But yeah, anything else we want to say about Toe Cutter or Hugh Keays-Byrne before we move on?
He's great. You say they made a lot of biker movies in Australia. I'm not surprised, because the visuals, the long stretches of isolated roads with nothing, not even a kangaroo on the side. I mean, that place was made for biker movies the way Bronson Canyon was made for westerns.
Yeah.
It's just the perfect visual.
Supposedly, a lot of the bikers were actually part of a real biker gang,
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
according to
Yeah,
like
yeah.
IMDb trivia.
No, I
And
think
that they,
always
and
a
that they actually had to like
reliable source.
come in costume, so they actually were riding the streets dressed like that.
This happens a lot. Indie filmmakers decide to make a biker movie, and they have what they think is a good idea, which is to get actual bikers to be in their movie,
Yeah.
and it's always a mistake for reasons that are obvious to apparently anyone who is not an indie filmmaker.
I heard they're really good for security at rock concerts too.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
absolutely.
Too
Who would know
soon?
better than to do
Oh God.
security at a rock concert?
Uh, anyways, moving on.
What could go wrong?
One other character, again, I think I left him off the list I give you guys. I apologize, but Tim Burns as Johnny the Boy, not a huge role. Obviously, his role is more pivotal in terms of the plot than
Mhm.
really the meat of the character. The only reason I think he's definitely worth mentioning is the last scene, which is kind of like one of the most iconic scenes of the entire
Yeah.
film. And also, I think the one scene that he really does give a good performance because he's cornered by Max, and he's kind of does this thing where he goes between threatening and pleading and
Right.
crying, and it's a I don't know,
It's
it's
pathetic.
yeah, not a huge role, but I loved him. I love that scene. I have a couple of notes when we talk about the kind of influences of this film, and especially that scene.
Yeah. I mean, I like that scene, but I felt like it should have been Toe Cutter. You know, that the last kill, the big revenge that we end with is on a character who's really, I mean, he didn't even really burn Goose. I mean, he was like fighting against it, and then he kind of made him throw the match. So he's a pathetic character.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of an intro. That one other line that I really like from him that makes him, I don't know, kind of sinister is when Goose is in the truck upside down, and he says, "Oh, he looks funny, doesn't he?" And it's
Mhm.
very. I feel like there probably could have been a lot more to that character. Apparently the script was much longer, and then they cut down a lot of what they shot. So I'm kind of curious if that character actually had like more presence in the kind of
Maybe.
original iteration.
He kinda reminded me of a character from, like, a Dirty Harry movie where, they're talking
Yeah,
about how the system is broken and letting these animals out on
yeah,
the streets. It's like, "I'm sick, man. They told me I'm sick," and, he's got all these
yeah, no,
excuses,
definitely.
and what we really want is for, either Clint Eastwood or Mel Gibson to come along and put him out of our misery.
Yeah, cool. I think the one other kind of bad guy I wanted to mention, he's only in there for a minute, but we got to mention the Knight Rider because I feel like
Knight
his scenes
Rider.
are very, very iconic. Played by
Yeah.
an actor named Vincent Gill or Jill. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Again, like most of the characters in this movie, he's been in a bunch of stuff in Australia, but I don't think anything that I recognized. Any thoughts on? Obviously, he's kind of the intro before we see
Mhm.
any of the other bikers, or before we see Toe Cutter, we see him. So he's kind of our introduction to the insanity of these future gangs, which I think is pretty effective too. Him and his
Mhm.
girlfriend.
The thing that grabbed me most about it was, especially having seen the other films and see what direction they go and how they kind of really ramp up. You can really see the seeds of how especially like you said, the villains talk in it, and the villain, because he's doing that whole announcing, and he's
Mhm.
announcing. I can't even remember the exact dialogue, but it's not normal speech.
Yeah.
That's for certain. It's this kind of elevated speech. It's like and he's doing an announcer. And so you can see this kind of seeds of what is going to become sort of as the other films ramp up. What's going to happen with those
Mhm.
villains getting bigger and bigger than life?
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
I'm actually really glad you mentioned that because when I was rewatching this movie, there was one line from the Knight Rider that really stood out to me. So he has a line. Yeah, he's doing his whole kind of monologue, but he has one line where he says, "Do you see me, Toe Cutter? Do you see me?" Does that
Hmm.
remind you of anything?
Oh, is that crap? That's
In Fury Road,
Fear
when
Road.
the
Yeah.
poor boys always say, "Witness
Uh,
me."
Yeah.
yeah.
That jumped out at me. Obviously, it probably just a coincidence, but for again, like going back to the fact that George Miller is a filmmaker who latches on to ideas and
Mm.
explores them and reuses them, and this is kind of a theme throughout the entire series. So when I heard that, I was like, oh man, I wonder if there's if that's just coincidence or if there's any intention behind that.
It's probably an
That's
intention in
that's
Fury Road, because
interesting. Yeah.
when we get to the point where we're talking about the third one,
Beyond Thunderdome.
Beyond Thunderdome, yeah. And the in this one you have the scene, at the beach, and you have the mentally disabled guy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's the proper way to
Mhm.
put it, but uh, this and I can't remember what his name was, like Bo or something. I forget what it was. And she runs into him. My understanding is in the third film when he's wrestling, what's
Mhm.
the big guy in Thunderdome itself,
Blaster, yeah.
Master Blaster, that's originally who it was supposed to be. It was originally
Oh.
supposed to be him, and so at one point that's what there was actually supposed to be a connection. So I
Oh,
could
interesting.
very well see George
Yeah.
Miller taking that connection between this character, Knight Rider, and uh, the characters in Fury Road. So
Yeah.
I could see that being intentional.
I hadn't really thought about. I'm glad you mentioned that because that's smart. The idea that of Knight Rider calling out to Toe Cutter, do you see me and everything? Because you could argue one of the themes that they keep talking about heroes and all, and if we don't have heroes, then inevitably people will latch on to a substitute. Lord Humongous, Moden Joe,
Yeah.
Tina Turner, whatever, people will seek out a strong horse. They will seek out someone who gives order to the chaos. And, a world without heroes will become a world of villains.
Yeah, yeah, and the that character is Benno that you were thinking about,
Okay.
played by Max Fairchild. Interesting piece of trivia. Also shows up as the big guy on the front of Humongous's car in the Road Warrior.
Oh wow.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, no, there's
Oh, and it's
also
supposed to be the same character then, or no? Just
no, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
okay.
Yeah, there's actually, and this is not something that I figured out on my own. This was I was looking at someone's like fan theory, but there is apparently the entire like original opening was when they talk about him killing a cop, and that's how he got the V8 that he's in, Knight Rider. Apparently there was something in the script where they named the cop, and the cop is named Concannon, and they were pointing out that in Fury Road, Furiosa says that she's from like she's I think it's like the house Concannon or something like that. So there are these like really very minute things that, and this is like, again, like when we talk about George Miller and just like, I think some of the best filmmakers are the ones that kind of latch on to these ideas
Right.
and will explore them and not give them up. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's also something that makes the series very interesting, since there's sometimes not perfect continuity between them, but there are these connective tissue.
So like,
that,
he has
yeah.
a universe that he has this universe in his head where all the movies are connected. And,
Yeah.
like people didn't listen to the Penguins and Happy Feet. So the
Oh
world
man, you
went to
stole my
shit.
line, man.
And
Of course.
and there were mutations where animals like pigs could start talking, and everything just goes straight to hell, and we get the Mad Max world.
Any Renee, Alan, I know, again, like the three of us talk a whole lot. Any thoughts from you guys on any of the villains or any of the heroes or anything else?
Well, I have no thoughts on how these villains relate to the next three movies because I haven't seen any of that.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to do a retrospective once we get through all 4 films and see what you think. And Renee, any thoughts?
I was just taken by, the unexpected choreography of the
Mm.
bikers. There was a lot of that in
Yeah.
so many ways. The way they rode the bikes, the way they parked their bikes, the way they moved in and out of buildings and interacted with each other. It was fascinating. It was like West Side
So
Story.
all I could think about was the Warriors when I saw them doing that. Like in the Warriors they had what gang paints their faces and walks around with baseball bats.
Baseball
It's
bats,
like
yeah.
it's this
A
big
cool gang.
setup to yeah. It's like this big setup, like these weird little nuances. But they only had one gang, so it was it was sort of little cliques within the gang. But all gangs have the guy that
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I'm a member of the gang, but I really shouldn't be here. I really shouldn't be here. And
That's also the only gang I would ever think about joining, because it seems pretty stupid to be a gang. But if they said, "Oh, we dress up like supervillains in a comic book and carry bats," I'm like, "Oh, sign me up."
You don't want to be part of the mime gang? All right, that's a whole nother.
Yeah, no roller skates. No roller skates for me.
We definitely got to do the Warriors episode at some point. There's a lot to talk about there. So yeah, before we move on, I think one other character I wanted to call out. mostly because there's a connection here that somehow I was not aware of. But Nick, or I think he's sometimes credited as Nico Lathoris, played the grease rat. He's the mechanic where they go and they're trying to get their tire patched. He's got he's only in there for like a scene or two. He's got some fun lines. He talks about speed's just a matter of money. How much do you want to spend? Love his character. Always thought he was kind of a fun little character. Doesn't show up in any of the the next two films, but would go on to be the co-writer of Mad Max Fury Road.
What?
Oh,
I don't know how, and I didn't do a whole lot of research into that because I want to, if we get to Fury Road, I want to
we
find
will.
out how the hell he went from, because as far as I could tell, I don't know, he wasn't. I'm sure maybe he knew George Miller, but his name doesn't come up as like an influential creative force in George Miller's like sphere at the time. So I don't know.
Apparently, also writing the screenplay for the sequel.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah, no,
The next one.
wow.
Wow.
I think he may have been like helping develop the story on both.
Good
of
for
them, but
him.
yeah, very random. I thought that was kind of cool though. Somehow I didn't realize that until now.
Just more proof that everyone has a screenplay. Every
Yeah.
single person,
Cool. Well, so I think we've covered all the characters, all the actors, all the performances that we probably want to talk about. So let's move on to talking about the people behind the camera. I've kind of mentioned a little bit the main driving force behind, no pun intended, behind this film was George Miller and Byron Kennedy. They were actually, I don't think they were trained filmmakers at all. They were doctors who shared a love of filmmaking. Apparently George Miller, years before this movie came out, he loved movies, he loved watching movies, and I guess eventually him and Byron Kennedy decided they wanted to make a movie. Apparently there are a ton of references throughout the entire series to a lot of other movies. Apparently, like specifically like Beyond Thunderdome has a lot of homages to Lawrence of Arabia. So apparently George Miller was just a film fan who wanted to make a movie. So him and Byron Kennedy worked on the screenplay for a couple of years, apparently. And then when it came time to actually make the movie, George Miller directed and Byron Kennedy produced. They had made a couple of shorts before this, kind of similar to other like first-time directors. It actually blew me away. For some reason, I thought George Miller had directed a couple of movies before this. Does not, to me at least, does not look like the work of a first-time director. It's definitely rough, and it's not a perfectly made film, but it is more competently made than plenty of movies made by plenty of veteran directors. So I don't know. Let's, I guess, talk about, how do we feel about George Miller? How do we feel about his direction in this movie? And then also I'll mention David Egby was the cinematographer on this, and he also didn't really, he had worked on like a TV movie. This was his first feature. He would go on to he'd work on a lot of movies. He worked on he shot Warlock, Quickly Down Under, Fortress, Dragonheart, Pitch Black, and Riddick. So definitely had a successful career after this, and I think it's obvious why watching this. It's a very well shot movie in my opinion. George Miller originally, he had a lot of influences, but actually silent film was a huge influence. And he even said, one quote from him was, "I basically wanted to make a silent movie, but with sound." And I think it shows.
I remember hearing something about that he wanted to make a movie that people in Japan could know what was happening and didn't have to, speak English. But it was, he specifically said Japan. Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. From what I had seen of him, he really stayed with his vision. Yeah.
I looked up the budget and I just re-looked it up to make sure I was right, and I completely missed a zero. When I first looked at it, I thought it said that the budget was $3 million, but I went back and looked, and it was only $300,000.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That's. I was like, oh, $3 million sounds about right, for back then. Maybe a little much, but 300,000 seems like, especially for all of the
stunts.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if you call them, I guess you call them pyrotechnics or whatever. I mean, they weren't really special effects, but the blowing of things up generally, I mean, that's a little more expensive than you would, cars are flipping and stuff. But
yeah.
Oh, you say that, but who blew up an ice cream truck? Us.
There we go.
And wasn't that like the most expensive piece?
Probably, but that's not saying much.
That's actually an interesting point when you talk about explosions. One of the interesting things to me about really the entire series visually is obviously there's a lot of like vehicular violence, there are a lot of car crashes. There actually aren't a whole lot of explosions in these movies. It's not like a Hollywood movie where cars crash and everything explodes. And in a
Yeah.
way, I think that makes the crashes a lot nastier because every cars don't explode, they almost disintegrate when they collide, and it almost like makes it look
Yeah.
more brutal than even like an explosion.
And maybe it came from getting bikers to play bikers, but does anybody remember the shot where the biker
Yeah.
got hit with the front, like the front wheel of a motorcycle?
Yeah.
Yeah. That looked
That is
like it
one of the
hurt.
that is one of the things I was going to call out as being like that is one of the nastiest looking stunts in the entire movie. And the stunts, a
Mhm.
lot of the stunts look very good. You know, there it doesn't look like there are a lot of wires in this movie, but man, yeah, that guy gets clocked on the back of the head.
Head by the
And
front.
it looks
Yeah,
real.
I have a feeling
Oh,
that
that's
part
real.
wasn't exactly planned, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think it was.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Apparently, there were a lot of things that weren't planned, or there were other notable things that weren't planned. Yeah, one of the few explosions in the film is when Knight Rider, in the beginning, finally crashes and his car explodes. But I always thought it was kind of weird because you see when his car is kind of like going around. I think it's like construction equipment or something, or a car wreck or something, and he has like basically a jet coming out of the back of his car. I don't know if you guys noticed that. I always noticed that,
Yeah.
and I always thought it was weird. Apparently, they just took a jet and attached it to the back of the car. So, uh, literally what they did. And apparently, it was not the stunt didn't come off as they planned, and it was one of those things where they shot it. The car went in completely the wrong kind of direction, and they thought it was ruined. Thought the shot was ruined, and they went back and looked at it, and they realized it looks amazing, which it does.
That's cool.
And you got to remember, this was shot on film. I mean, there was,
Yeah.
it wasn't like you shoot it and you can look in your little, the view screen and see what it looked like. I mean, even the $300,000, they probably spent $50,000 in film. I mean,
Yeah, apparently it was a beg and borrow movie. I think that they got a lot of like small investors. A lot of the someone mentioned the bikers were basically just a real biker gang that had their own bikes. Now, I've read conflicting things about this, but supposedly the van that they hit in the beginning of the movie that kind of just flies off the road. Apparently, supposedly that was actually George Miller's personal van. Um,
Oh.
yeah, apparently it was called a Mazda Bongo, and which is obviously a very 70s name for a van. I don't know. I'm always struck by just the nastiness of, again, it's not, they don't show a lot of like physical, they don't show people, crawling out of the car wrecks without any arms or anything, but the cars just, when something crashes, the cars just disintegrate.
Yeah. And when someone does get blown up, you got the George Miller subliminal close up of giant eyeballs.
Yeah. That's one of his. I love that trademark. I think they do it twice in this, and then he actually does it at least once in the Road Warrior. Yeah, I love that effect so much. That actually reminds me a lot of. It almost looks like a cartoonish thing, and it actually reminds me a lot of kind of like Sam Raimi style of doing very
Yes.
like over the top, almost cartoonish things that are actually kind of grotesque.
Now, we actually paused it and looked at it because it looked to me like it was like a Evil Dead type of thing. What was that, a prosthetic? It really looked like somebody's eyes, even when I
No, yeah,
paused it.
it was a prosthetic. They had basically, it was just a head in the helmet that they could pop the
Okay,
eyes
the
out.
skin that they used, whatever they used for skin, it looked really good, and I was like,
Yeah.
that really looks like somebody's face. It didn't look like like a cartoon. The eyes did a little bit, but the skin, when I paused it at that frame, it was like, I was like, wow, that really looks like somebody's head. How'd they do it with the eyes, though?
That's pretty good. It's so fast, so subliminal.
Mm.
It could have been fake, but I'm glad they did a good job. I had to
They had a
try
little
that.
shot like that too with crows. I forget when it was, but it was just a
Yeah,
little.
that's when they're kind of cutting away to the violence at the Chevy, the couple that's
Mhm.
kind of getting assaulted, and they
Yes.
do the shot of the crow. Actually, kind of interesting. Another kind of connected thing, and I don't know anything about Australia. I don't know if there are just a lot of crows out there, but you hear kind of crows cawing in a couple of scenes, and I also noticed that something you notice in the Road Warrior. There's a lot of like effects of like crows, and then
Hmm.
again puts them in Fury Road, when they're going through the kind of swamp area with the guys on stilts, there are a lot of crows, and they have the same like cawing effect. So I don't know, maybe it's just Australia has a lot of crows, but I thought that was something else that was kind of interesting across all three movies.
I would say, talking about the shots, there are also some just in terms of when they're in the car, there's that sort of, again, it's I would say iconic, but now it's more signature shot because he reuses it, I think, in later ones. They use it is where you're looking at Max as he's driving. This is when he has gone mad, I guess, more, and it's you're you're facing towards him, and you see the air intake sticking out of it, and you just like that kind of the view head on of him as he's driving. He's looking very intense, and I think, don't they use that again, like
Yeah, they use that, and that's they take that shot and do it a lot in the Road Warrior.
Yeah, and so it's interesting. And again, you see this sort of like the generation of where he's going to go with
cat.
Do you get attacked by a cat, Bill?
Oh, these cats, they're demons is what they are.
I can relate. I can relate.
Bill doesn't actually have cats. I should let the audience know. He just has flashbacks from when we watch Cats, the movie.
Oh God!
Occasionally he just says, "Oh, these cats."
Rebel Wilson's back again. Make her go.
No, I think we're gonna have to like watch that movie just so I have an excuse to watch that movie.
Yeah, we'll do a whole episode on that. I'm more than down for that.
Only if we can get the butthole cut, but that's another story.
Hey man, if they can release the Snyder cut, they can definitely release. The
you know the story about that, right? That supposedly they actually had buttholes on the cats, and somebody had to go through and erase them all.
And some poor effect artist spent 2 weeks going back and erasing cat buttholes.
4 years in college to learn how to do match moving and color correction, and this is where it led to.
Yeah, where's
more movies I haven't seen?
Where's that work print leak? Right?
Yeah.
Something else that kind of impressed me too, like obviously, Miller would become a very accomplished director. He directed, I think he's done like a dozen movies after this, like you mentioned, Happy Feet, Babe, Pig in the City, but he's obviously now he has a pretty long filmography. But at the time I think he was almost experimenting and kind of finding his own style by incorporating a bunch of other styles. So there are a lot of things that are kind of like one-offs, or things that he's obviously playing around with. So he has a lot of interesting like one-off, like I love the effect when Max goes in to look at the goose, and he kind of like pulls the sheet back, and you just see his face, but the cut is like this weird like ripple cut, or this weird like ripple effect, like you see in like going into like a dream sequence, and it goes on into like a close-up of his face. So a lot of like weird like one-off things where he's obviously kind of experimenting and finding like his style as a director.
Right. And he did. I mean, when you think about it now, I mean, how old is Miller now?
So he's 75. He was born in I think 46. That's another thing that's amazing. He was 70 years old when Fury Road was released. So kind of amazing that he's, and it's kind of amazing too. Like you think about a lot of these directors who were very kind of adventurous and audacious. You think of like young Sam Raimi. I'm trying to think of some other. You mentioned Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like Toby Hooper,
John Carpenter, and you think of a lot of these directors, and even like big Hollywood directors like Ridley Scott and Steven Spielberg. And you look at their 80s stuff, and you're like, oh man, this is so good. Right.
And then you look at stuff that they've done the last 20 years, and it's like, oh man, they're just kind of going through the motions now.
Right.
But then like George Miller never lost it, in my opinion. Like he never felt like he was just making a movie because that's what he does, right? Like he was still kind of chasing that perfect film even through like Fury Road. Which, interestingly enough, another thing I didn't realize. So apparently, George Miller really hated this movie. I have a quote here, and I kind of want to read this just because I think it's. I didn't realize this, and I was really, really surprised. But he said, "I felt utterly defeated by the first Mad Max. I felt that film was unreleasable. It's a mystery to me why the film still worked. All I see are its defects. And I thought that if you prepared a film well enough, the film that's in your head, it's just a matter of executing it. And I was quite naive then." Now I got these quotes from a interview with him, I think in like the mid 2000s during his Happy Feet phase. So I don't know if he's like, maybe he's softened on it. I don't know if this was, he still feels this way. I thought it was pretty impressive that in my mind this is like one of the best debut films of maybe any director ever, and he just did not like it at all. So
Was there something specific he didn't like about it? Because it was an indie film, so it wasn't like the studio interfered with it, right? Or would the distribution company have something to do with it?
No. I think
He
it
just
was
didn't feel like he executed it properly?
I
Is that
honestly, I think it's because I think it's because he is a perfectionist, and like, watching Fury Road and listening to how long that movie took and how much time he spent getting every single shot exactly how he wanted it. He has another quote that he says, one of the big differences between Mad Max and Mad Max 2, in the interim, I spent almost every day thinking about what I'd done wrong on Mad Max 1, why it wasn't sort of bending itself to my will. Remember that I spent almost a year cutting it, so I saw every mistake. And once it's locked on film, it's there forever. And you say, "Oh my God! If the camera was only a little bit lower, or if I had done that a little faster, then if I'd changed that line, I was able to confront that. We all do when we're cutting a film, but I was able to do that. So I think it was partly budget, but yeah, I mean, probably partly just being a first time filmmaker. They had a super limited shooting schedule too, so they only had, I think it was only like 6 weeks to shoot, and then they did some additional stunt work. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting though. So some of the other stuff, and I'm sorry, I'm just kind of rambling here. So guys, feel free to jump in whatever. But partly because I found out stuff that I didn't even realize before, and honestly, a lot of this stuff was kind of makes the whole series make sense. Apparently, yeah, they had basically, him and Byron Kennedy had written or when they were writing the movie, it was more of a post-apocalyptic film, and ultimately they couldn't make the movie that they really wanted to because of their budgetary limitations. So that's what, obviously it's society at the brink, and they have, it even starts with the very first shot is, it says
Mhm.
a few years in the future, or whatever, a few years from now, sorry. And they basically, I think he wanted to make the Road Warrior from the outset, but
Hmm.
they
But
just couldn't.
sure, they weren't going to give basically a first time director. It's just as well. It's just as well. He made as good a movie as he could make with $300,000.
Yeah.
well,
If he had
actually,
tried to make,
yeah. Okay.
yeah, if he tried to make the Road Warrior for $300,000, we wouldn't be talking about it.
Well, what I like the fact that it's a pre-apocalyptic film, because
Yeah.
like you said, it's not something you see that often, and it's like you see there's still society, people are still trying to hold on to some things,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it's clearly falling apart, like the halls of justice that they keep showing,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
wreck.
The signs falling down, never a good sign.
Yeah, and the
Uh,
fact that I really kind of like that aspect of it, because it's not something you see all that often, if ever. You always see it either, everything's great or everything's shitty. And this is
right.
like, well, things are shitty, but they're not quite shitty yet. I mean, people are still, getting ice cream cones, and people are still, they still have their families and houses, and things are trying to keep some sense of normality while
Yeah.
society's starting to go down the toilet. And so I really kind of, it might be something that he thought of as a weakness, but to me, that was actually one of the strengths of the film, is that it's this, well, things are going bad, but they're not all that horrible yet, which I thought was
Hmm.
kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten about the halls of justice, but every time I saw that, I was like, meanwhile, at the halls of justice, I kept thinking about,
Meanwhile,
Super Friends.
Shoo, shoo.
Yet another
Aquaman looks
film that
for
reminds
something
me
to
of childhood.
do.
Yeah, I think it's also like it's not a perfect film. I'm sure that there are shots that, whatever, they're not necessarily perfect, but like, he has such a strong visual sense. And I think like when you get to the meat of the movie, which is the chase scenes,
Hmm.
like, there are very few films that do the only director that can do a chase scene better than George Miller in Mad Max is maybe George Miller in The Road Warrior.
Right.
He has, and part of that, again, honestly, was probably budget. Like, they, there's this scene where Goose is on the motorcycle and you can kind of see over his shoulder. That was literally just, they just stuck a cameraman behind him and they went off, and he was literally going like
Mhm.
70 miles down the road. There was no rigs, there was no safety
Right.
truck holding them in place. It was literally just a camera guy on a bike. And I think that comes across in the film.
You know, there was one moment that made me just sort of sit up, and it's where when they say where are the gang members, and they're off looking for fuel, and I'm like, whoa, it begins. So like we're starting to see fuel shortages where these guys, because okay, we're talking about a motorcycle.
Yeah.
They don't have huge gas tanks. I mean, yeah, I realize these guys are no good nicks, but they ought to be able to just pull into a gas station and take the gasoline. They got to hijack a gas truck. Are things starting to get a little scarce? I
Yeah.
think they are. And so yeah, we are actually beginning to see. It probably didn't take very long to go from Australia looking a little rough to the apocalypse, to Lord Humongous, Warrior of the Wasteland, and all this other, just how fast it all collapses. Which you look around the world and you start, you look at things and you look around and you start thinking it always seems like these movies take place in some imaginary world where that could happen, but it couldn't really happen. And then you wonder, I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
it really could,
Yeah, I'm
you
not really
know?
thinking it's that distant anymore.
Yeah.
I mean,
We
they
joke
say
about it, and it's
society is
scary
just
because
what 4 square meals away from collapse.
Yeah.
yeah,
You know,
because
4 square.
literally, and it's a line we had in Fix It in Post, but it's like the zombie apocalypse is something a lot of us have dreamed about and look forward to, but the reality of it is it will be awful because there will not be any zombies. It will be an apocalypse, but there won't be any zombies. The people you'll be shooting will be people just like you, and except they're coming after your food or whatever. You might be the food. Um, yeah, so apocalypses are no fun, and the the I mean, his apocalypse is, let's face it, I mean, Fury Road, man, they got guys with electric guitars spitting out fire and they're swinging on pogo sticks and everything is just like it's
Unless you're the blood donor strapped to the front of someone's car. I mean,
okay. So, there's always those on the bottom of the totem pole. Let's not look at the glass being half full here. You know, it's pretty cool. I mean, what do these guys do when they're not chasing after Furiosa? I mean, they've got this set up like they've been waiting their whole lives to do this. It's like
Well, we can talk
finally,
about that when we get to Fury Road.
yeah, that's true.
well, no, it's interesting though, because I think even though it's a little cliched now, but saying it's set, a few years from now always sets this film in the near future. And that's
Yeah.
something. There are a lot of imitators that came out in the 80s and the 90s, and a lot of them were, it was I don't Bronx Warriors 1990 or whatever.
Ah,
Yeah, you know what I'm talking
God.
about. But so many of them were like in the futuristic world of 1995 or the
Right.
futuristic world of 2000, and this avoids. That's the thing I love about these movies is they avoid kind of like anchoring themselves in any
Yeah.
specific time or even place. I mean, obviously this is set in Australia. It seems like it's set in Australia. Everyone's Australian, but I don't think
But it
they
could be
ever
Arizona.
Yeah, they never explicitly say it's Australia. So it's kind of a setting out of time and place.
If you want to know how important George Miller is to this movie, watch any of the Italian ripoffs of Road
Yeah.
Warrior or the ones I think Bronx Warriors. That sounds like they combined Road Warrior with Escape from New York
Yep,
and
I
came
think
up
so.
with a total
so.
fiasco. They're so terrible. They are so terrible. And they were probably made for $300,000 too.
Or less or
more.
$30,000.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that you mentioned. I want to getting into kind of like the script and development and stuff. There was actually one other credited screenwriter, James McCausland, who apparently was not a screenwriter. He was again George Miller, not really knowing, I think, how to go about making a film. He just kind of emulated what he knew, and I guess there were a lot of screenwriters that he was a fan of who had been journalists. So apparently he just went out and hired James McCausland, who was like a financial journalist, but also a big film aficionado. And this is his only screenwriting credit. He never worked on any other movie, but he did have some interesting quotes about, when they first started developing the film. And this was a few years after the 1973 oil crisis. And basically that was on their mind was, I think it actually doesn't really manifest itself as much in this movie, nearly as much as it does in The Road Warrior.
Mhm.
But it's interesting. You mentioned that one scene where they are, if you're just watching the film by itself, you might take it as, oh, they're just stealing gas because that's what they do because they're,
Yeah.
they're criminals. But in the context of what the movie actually wanted to make and some of the movies he ended up making, that is actually a big part of it. That the basically, I think one of his quotes was something along the lines of when there's an oil crisis or whatever, people can't get gas, they will do literally anything to keep their vehicles running.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty important in Australia, where keeping your vehicles running is the difference between dying or not, because it's a big empty country with a few spots to live in between, and you got to get there. I do love the car culture of
Yes.
this film, and I
Yes.
think kids today, a car is a thing that takes you from one place to another. Back when we had places we were able to go, and there was a time when cars were something you cherished and something you thought about and dreamed of and loved like a cowboy loved his horse. And the way these guys are talking about the V8, last of the V8s,
Yeah.
it's a V8, and you're like, why did they stop making V8s if they were so great? I'm sure they got lousy gas mileage or whatever, but you know, it's it's just so cool to see, that back. I haven't loved a car since 1978, when we had a Ford Thunderbird, and it was a thing of beauty. And everything we've gotten since is just a utilitarian piece of junk that just gets me to places. But there was a time when
Bill,
cars
you
had
need a V8.
personality.
You need a V8.
I need a
All
V8
right, no one's
Interceptor.
gonna do the joke, right? I could have had a V8 anyway.
I could have had a V8 Interceptor.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah,
doesn't
I mean,
this
their
make you
car
want to go
culture
out
was
and get a
definitely
real
a thing of the
car?
70s. What?
This doesn't make you want to go out and get a real car when you see this and everything. But then you're like, what would you do with it? If you hit 72, the cops pull you over.
Yeah.
So there's no point in having it. It gets lousy mileage, and that's bad for the environment. And I don't know, but these cars were so awesome.
I mean, you had the muscle cars of the 70s, and this was 79. So, you
Yeah.
had car culture. I remember I was never even a big car fan, but I used to occasionally get Cartoon Magazine, which was it was a whole a thing of comics about cars. And I was like, I didn't really care about cars, but I'd still get it. So,
It
yeah.
sounds nonsensical now because, like, hey, look, everyone, get excited! It's the brand new Prius, and you look at it, it's like it's a shoebox,
Yeah.
an aerodynamic shoebox.
Well,
I mean, I
it's kind
think,
of. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I wonder if I'm assuming maybe car culture was as big in Australia as it was in the U.S. In
Well,
the 70s
I
with
wa-
the muscle
I
cars.
was gonna say, so George Miller apparently grew up in a town called Chinchilla, which is apparently, like most towns in Australia, in the middle of absolutely nowhere.
Right.
So he actually does talk about that being a huge influence on kind of him and his kind of creative force, because apparently they were in the middle of nowhere and there was nothing to do. And if you were a kid and you came of age, basically what you did on the weekend was, if you could get a car, you got out on the road and you tooled around with it. And obviously, like, there was probably a lot of racing and stuff. He also mentions that he knew at least a few people by the time he was a young adult had died in car wrecks. But yeah, so I don't know if it was quite the same car culture, but I think he had that affinity to cars and vehicles as as kind of a way of kind of freeing yourself, which obviously as a kid is super important. And obviously, they didn't have the budget. You have the V8 Interceptor, and then you have the pursuit specials that the cops drive around. But other than that, I mean, the only other car that really shows up here is the Chevy that they kind of destroy, and that's kind of like the one kind of like standout vehicle. And apparently all the cars were they were not actually, they were basically, they took a kind of stock vehicle and made them look a lot cooler than they were, which you can kind of see, I think, in the scene where they're wrecking the Chevy. Like the things on the hood like just kind of fall over when someone's stomping on the hood. So I think it's kind of obvious that
Yeah.
but they obviously didn't have the budget. But then you go into the other films and you start having these, like, the cars become important characters in, the villains have their specific cars. And Max always has his V8. And the huge thing in Fury Road is how mad he is that they stole his V8 and now they're driving it.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything else? I think the one other thing, I think we mentioned it earlier, Brian May's score. I actually love it. It's a little over the top. It's okay. It's a lot over the top, but I think it works. I think it's the fact that it's so. Sometimes it's sweet and slow, but man, when he gets manic, like it just pumps up. I don't know. I think it's a really great score. It's kind of corny. He's probably better known for he also did the score for Road Warrior. I think it's probably better known, but I don't know. I like the score.
It felt over the top for me. Now, if it had been the Road Warrior, it would have felt fine. It's just that this being, a more grounded in reality kind of movie, it just seemed a little, too much sometimes. But I mean, I don't dislike it, and I love the score for Road Warrior, which I guess is basically the same thing, just with, to me, visuals that support it more.
Yeah.
Just my feeling.
I mean, I think, and maybe it's partially it's there to try to push it to that level, because, like you said, they wanted to do something bigger and grander and couldn't. So one way
Yeah.
you kind of do that is you manipulate the audience with
That's true.
the score. What about Renee and Alan? What do you guys think?
I agree. It's funny. The score didn't really. It's one of those things I don't tend to notice unless it really is kind of, a little grandiose. I am one of those people. I let it kind of affect me, and I don't even realize it. I think he did fairly well from my perspective. Just that there was only a couple of times that I did notice it, that it really stood out. But I enjoyed it. It was good. And then circling back to the cars, I appreciated that it didn't feel like movies today where every car you see is product placement. It was just a nice, good, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the thing I love about even in Fury Road, like when they finally had a budget, like everything was custom built, and there was no like, oh, it's brought to you by GM.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the score, the only thing I really remember was when they were in the car chases, and it's Australian, and it sounded kind of like AC/DC. They're Australian, so, and they were popular at the time too. So yeah, I like that part of the score. I don't remember anything of the score really outside of the car the car chasing.
That was
Yeah.
the same for me. Yeah, that's when it stood out.
I think that's kind of the most iconic, which is like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree, though, the best probably musical moment in the film is the sax. Probably the most iconic scene of the entire movie.
I still don't even remember the saxophone.
No,
That's
first
when
time
you're
that you
introduced to his wife.
Yeah.
I had to pause it. I was so
He
startled.
sent me a Snapchat of it going, what the fuck? It was
Yeah.
And
The
then
last thing I want to do is watch it again for the saxophone scene.
there's actually a callback. The only moment that I think is the least bit like funny in this, like incidentally funny, is when he has like the driving montage, and you get like a little bit of that sax in there. And he's like brooding, and then there's like sax in the background, and like, oh man. I think the other thing that kind of stood out to me, and this kind of part of this goes into the series in general, but yeah, like the two things that I think that people like misremember this movie, or they have like a concept of this movie that's kind of like doesn't actually jive with what the movie is. One is obviously, I think we've talked about, like, it's not a post-apocalyptic film, but when people talk about Mad Max, I think usually they're talking about the Road Warrior, but they don't realize it.
Right.
Because, doing a lot, like looking up, trying to do like research and stuff, and it's like, man, there's so many places where you see people talking about Mad Max, but they're talking about it being apocalyptic, and it's really not. The other thing that I found really interesting is, a lot of people talk about this movie as like a revenge film, and it kind of is, but I think I'd actually remembered it as being like Mad Max going after the biker gang because they kill his wife. But then rewatching it, it's like
That's
revenge.
totally not it until the
It's
very
the last
end.
25
Yeah.
minutes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing, just talking about like overall, the writing and I think the editing, like, man, this movie is an hour and a half long, and it's I feel like there's very little fat to it, which is
Yeah.
really impressive because, these days you would have probably a lot more exposition, probably a lot more like trying to establish the relationship between him and his wife. But I think it works. Like I feel like there's not a lot of fat, but there's also not a lot I would add to this movie.
hmm
But I do think some things are cut because okay, does anyone have any idea who the Dark One is? Do you remember the reference to the Dark One when they're at the? This is right before his wife gets killed. This is like when she's at the beach and running from the biker gang, and Max runs off into the woods with the gun and stuff like this. And the older woman goes, "Do you want me to call the Dark One? Should I call the Dark One?" She mentions it a couple
Yeah.
times, and there's
Oh,
no other mention of it. And it's like,
Hmm.
who the hell did I miss something? Who the
Yeah.
hell's the Dark One? Or all of a sudden, is there a whole like Lovecraftian subtext to Mad Max that I've missed? I just don't quite understand.
was that in the subtitles?
Yeah, she says out loud. It wasn't just she says, "Do you want me to call the Dark One? I can call the Dark One." When she has the gun and and he's running off to look for the biker gang.
So since I know
Oh,
so much about Mad Max, the Dark
yeah.
One was he was a character, I guess, that didn't make it. But he was prominently featured in the original script for Mad Max.
Oh, okay.
Sounds almost like you're
Huh.
googling it there, Alan.
That
Wow.
too.
No,
Hey, but
no.
if it's an answer, that's
Alan's a
good.
fountain of knowledge.
Yeah, no, it says that the Dark One is Max's driving partner in the original script. But that's
Uh,
interesting, especially if you took a year to cut this. You would think that they
Uh.
would have, or maybe they just left it as like, people will wonder who the Dark One is.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually like one of the things I love about this movie, though, is, and really the whole series. People. One of the biggest buzzwords these days is talking about world building, like, oh, the world building and the world of building Game of Thrones is amazing. But the thing is, this movie actually does a more interesting job of world building than I think
Yeah.
a lot of movies. Because it doesn't try
Doesn't
to give you
explain everything.
yeah. So it almost feels like
Yeah, but
it's
a
like,
reference to the Dark One, I don't think that was necessary. I think that was more just, oops, we left it in by
yeah,
accident
I don't
because
know.
Yeah,
Well, I
that
probably.
don't
wasn't
know.
like an intentional. We're going to keep it mysterious because it it would only be if the Dark One was like if that was just a guy's nickname like Goose, right? Then it's which apparently it was supposed to be. It's not. It wasn't really world building. It's more just yeah. Because otherwise,
I
it's
don't
like,
know.
is there a Lovecraftian element here?
They don't do another take. So they just left it in.
Should I summon the Dark
Oh,
One?
so he's supposedly the one that hit the tree and bounced back with his face ripped off.
Oh, okay.
Oh, interesting.
So there you are.
Yeah.
So little bits and pieces got left in there.
There's little
And
bits
then
and pieces.
Renee sent this. Renee sent this to me, so she's the one who should actually be reading it.
What you're talking about. Never seen that article before life.
Okay, no, that's actually interesting. Yeah, like I said, I had read that there was basically they had a huge script that they cut down for shooting, and then they cut down, even further for the final cut. So it's kind of interesting that I imagine there's a lot of stuff in there that got cut out. I didn't catch that though. Maybe because I didn't actually watch it with subtitles, and I probably thought she was saying something else with an accent.
When I hear something in any movie that I don't understand like that, I just assume I missed something. Like, I should know who
That's
the
what I
Dark
was
Yeah.
like. I was like, wait a second. I don't remember the
I
Dark
missed-
One.
No, I
Yeah.
do
Well, I'm
remember
definitely
that
going to
now
write
that
some
you
Mad
mention it.
Max fan fiction with Lovecraft. So that's all
I
there's to
mean,
it.
to be fair, they never they talk about a great war, but they never explicitly state how things became so
Right.
apocalyptic. So,
Did they mention
maybe
that in
there's
this one? Or are you talking about? I thought that was in the
no,
beginning of-
in the Road Warrior.
Yeah, in the Road Warrior, they're talking about like the gas wars and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But that's another movie.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I look forward to your fan fiction, Paul.
Yeah.
Next episode, you can read that live on the air.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be slash fiction, by the way, too. So.
Oh God.
just a
Okay.
heads up.
Ay, yikes.
Max slash, Nerlathatep. So.
Oh my God. Any other thoughts on I don't know, just direction, story? I'm trying not to stray. I have a lot of thoughts, but a lot of them kind of stray into the relationship between this movie and the sequel. So
Well, one thing that I noticed was I guess we'll just call it the lack of extras. And I mean,
Yeah.
I wonder if that was budget or was that because of how the world was supposed to be?
I'm thinking budget.
Probably a little from column A, a little from column B.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that there aren't a lot of scenes that take place anywhere. Like there are some kind of extras in the town scenes when the bikers first show up in that one town. But yeah, I mean, other than that, there aren't really a lot of scenes with them. There are scenes. Oh yeah, my favorite scene is obviously when Goose goes to the what is it, like the Sugar Loaf Lounge or something like that. There are extras
The
in that
singer,
scene.
yeah.
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 There
Oh
are people in
yeah, that was
the bar.
bizarre.
That's
That
probably
was
the most crowded scene.
it's also probably the most dated scene. That's like the one move, the one scene in the entire movie that really makes you say,
Right.
"Oh yeah, this is a '70s movie."
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Bill was talking earlier about like every time there's a like a bit character, they're like a real character. I don't know. Yeah, that lady, she's like, yeah, she freaked me out. It's like she sort of looked post-apocalyptic. It's like, but maybe
Oh, you're talking
not.
about
Maybe
uh,
yeah. It was just I don't. Yeah, I did. I
the
liked
old
her
lady?
character. I actually
May?
looked her up earlier.
No, the singer. You're
Oh,
talking
the
about the
singer.
singer, right,
Yeah.
Alan?
Yeah, she was a little spooky.
Yeah, I don't know. There are also a lot of things that I'm like, well, is this like, are they making this look like a post-apocalyptic film or a semi-apocalyptic film, or is this just what like Australia looked like in the '70s?
Right.
Like, I
No
have no
offense.
frame of
Sparsely
reference.
populated.
No offense at all. Look, I mean, I was born and I grew up in the country, so I know like the country looks the same no matter what country you go to. So there are a lot of scenes where I was like, oh, is this just small town country folk or?
It's also one of the only Australian movies I can think of that, or maybe I just watched too many documentaries where never once does it bring up the fact that everything in Australia is trying to kill you.
Yeah.
That is true.
There's no poisonous snakes. There's no spiders that can bite through your boots. There's no jellyfish and blue-ringed octopus and platypus.
Koala bears.
Killer koala bears. Just everything.
Drop bear.
Not a kangaroo to be seen. I guess they left out the kangaroos so that you could say, oh yeah,
that was probably in the longer
Arizona.
script. The kangaroo death scene.
There is a poisonous snake in Road Warrior though. It's the gyro captain's security system.
That's right.
Oh, that's right.
Cool. Also, the first of two films where Max has a dog that gets killed.
Why'd you have to bring that up?
I know.
Yeah, thanks.
It's the one part of the film that really always gets to me is the dog. Because it's a cute
I
dog.
know.
Wait, did I miss the dog getting killed? When did the dog get killed?
Yeah. Well, you
When did
don't
the dog
see it
get
get
killed?
killed. It's in.
There
It's
was a
when
dog?
she's.
It's like the baby. It just shows up and leaves again.
Oh
That wasn't what was hanging from the tree. I thought that was just some rat or something.
no, that was the dog. Yeah.
That was no. In my head, it's a rat. Nope.
Okay,
I remember
okay,
it.
okay.
I
Never
remember.
mind.
Yeah,
Oh,
I don't remember that at
It
all.
was a rat.
I remember it
Yeah.
hanging from the tree.
It was not the
Oh
dog.
yeah,
I
no.
refuse
Okay,
to.
yeah. I do
Nope,
remember
was
that.
a
I
rat.
don't remember the
Are you sure it
alive
wasn't
dog,
the? No, never mind.
but I
think it was the
remember
baby.
something hanging from the tree. We thought it was like a squirrel or something, or a badger.
Yeah.
Paul-
In my
Paul-
head,
no,
yeah,
no,
that's
Oh
what it
God,
is.
God! If Australia had badgers, they would have taken over the world by
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Oh Lord. Don't jinx. Like I was saying,
Venomous.
in Mad Max in Road Warrior, they're poisonous snakes. In Australia, they're just called snakes.
Yeah,
You
there's
don't have to say poisonous.
Yeah.
That goes without saying.
Anything else we want to talk about, just kind of overall in the production of the film, I guess, before we move on.
I heard that in the beginning, Max was supposed to be a journalist, and they couldn't reconcile his family being killed, so they decided to make him a cop.
Are you
Probably one of the
serious?
most best decisions in the history of screenwriting.
Like,
That-
what
no,
would they
that's
do
the
for
best
first three
decision in the
quarters of
history of
film?
decisions.
That's bizarre. It's like all about him being a cop. That's so strange.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, a
Yeah.
journalist.
So would all of the cops have been journalists?
Yes, in the,
Being
in the
attacked by a biker gang?
Hey, listen, I gotta tell you, I gotta be honest with you. I think I would have been rooting for the bikers.
On that note,
You're welcome.
no, that's interesting. Like I said, I actually didn't do a ton of research into like I kind of want to see if I can find that because like some of these old scripts, like surprisingly, you can find them online. So I'm like, I want to see if I can find that and actually read it.
Me too. I mean, so
Yeah.
what was the
On
premise?
YouTube, I can send you a video if I can remember.
Yeah,
which
yeah,
one it
definitely.
What's the premise? They kill his family, so he writes a really harsh letter to the editor.
was. Yeah.
Well, I actually tried not to watch too many of these. Like, I know that there are a lot of like Mad Max mega fans, and they have like a lot of good YouTube videos. I tried not to watch too many of them because I didn't want to influence my thoughts too much. But now that we're done with this, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I
go ahead
tried
and watch
too.
them.
I tried not to watch too many as well.
Yeah,
I watched as many as I could.
fair enough. Hey, you know, to each his own. I think it's good to have different levels of preparation.
I drank a lot of Foster's Lager.
Oh,
I
God.
took notes.
Look, I'm just gonna say, I used to know an Australian guy, and the fastest way to make him angry was to mention Foster's. So
Oh my God.
cool.
But
And to mention
what?
their
That's
slogan.
Australian for beer.
Yeah, that would he would not be happy when you said that.
Oh wow.
Anyways, so I think we're probably getting kind of towards the end here. I don't know if anyone else will actually have anything, but I did want to throw this in because every movie that's near and dear to my heart, there are always moments that kind of stand out to me. So I wanted to do a little segment where we call out if there are any moments in the film that really like stand out or that we particularly love. Does anyone have anything other than me?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'd say I love the moment because I'd sound like a psycho, but the whole scene where she gets run down is just such an iconic shot sequence. And again, you don't see anything, but you know exactly what happened, and you see them coming right up to her, and you see, I mean, it's the whole way it's shot. Granted, yes, she's dumb as a post for running down I'm going to get out of the safety of the car and run down the middle of the road with these, like, what the hell? And the old lady fires and apparently like misses them completely, even though it's a shotgun. But I mean, she could have hit like
She
somebody.
tried.
Pardon?
Yeah.
She tried her best.
She tried.
Well, yeah,
So I mean,
apparently
I
there
don't want
has
to
been research done that the way to avoid getting hit by a car is to run straight down the road that it's on.
I find
don't-
that research
well,
highly dubious.
But like I said, I don't want to sound like a psycho as that's my favorite moment, but I think it's such an
No, it's
iconic
great.
moment and so
Yeah.
well
No,
shot.
it's terrific. That's wonderfully done.
The
Yeah.
fact that you just see the shoe and the ball flying into frame and nothing else as the bikers go by is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that I'd call that my precious moment.
Does anyone else have anything?
I like when he gives Johnny the boy the hacksaw.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, God.
And I feel
Yeah.
like that's been ripped off 1,000 times since. I mean, didn't Alan Moore do that in Watchmen too?
I don't think so.
I thought
I have-
Rorschach, like the when he has the flashback to the child murderer.
yeah, I know what you're talking
Oh,
about.
perhaps, yeah, that does.
I do have
Again
one.
in Road Warrior?
I do have one other note I have that I'm gonna do a name drop, but we'll get to that segment in a minute. Anyone else have anything? I know I have one, and this is actually not necessarily because it's a particularly good moment, but just because when I was a teenager, I would watch this movie a lot, and I had a friend that also loved it, and the scene where he goes in to see Goose and he comes out, and you know Fifi's trying to stop him, and he just turns around and he just goes, "Hey man, that thing in there, that's not the goose. It's not the goose," and just walks away. We used to kind of like riff on that. We would often like repeat that line to each other randomly, but I actually think it's a pretty good line and a pretty good delivery. So yeah, I think that's probably one of mine if I had to choose.
Yeah, that is good.
Was good, but it was so sad. Made me
Yeah.
feel bad for the goose.
Yeah,
Like he's
But
like,
again,
hey
the goose
man.
is still alive.
it's still alive.
He's like, I'm right here.
Not
You're calling
getting-
me a thing.
Not getting into the other films, but they're due to the lack of direct kind of narrative between them. There are a lot of kind of theories about that, and one of them is that obviously the humongous, you see the back of his head and he got burned, and one of the theories is Goose became the humongous. I don't believe it, but whatever.
Yeah, no, I'm totally going with the station master again. So that's
The station master. Oh my god. Okay, Renee or Alan, do you guys have anything you want to call out?
No. I was gonna mention the scene too where everybody got run over.
Yeah.
But I just
I've got scenes that are like stuck in my mind, but I don't have any that I would call precious moments.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just going to speak for both of you and say it's Jesse's sax scene.
Well, that
Actually,
wasn't
actually, I have one other. And this is it seems kind of it's kind of crude, but I actually do love the fact that the first time you see Roop, he's like looking at the couple in the
Yeah.
scope, like trying to have sex, and then the Charlie honks the horn, and then you see them running away. I don't know, that whole sequence is the only, it's kind of funny because it's the only like actual nudity in the film, and it's just very kind of random and silly. But I don't know.
Was there nudity? Because I looked really close and I couldn't see any.
Well, if you look through his
Oh,
scope, there were some bare asses. I think
no,
that
they were naked. Okay, yeah, when they were running away,
the
but
couple.
Yeah.
in the like while he was looking through the scope before they ran away, it's like it's like one of those things where they intentionally put like the arm in front of somebody so you
Oh
can't see
yeah,
them.
yeah.
I was like, oh
I
my
don't.
gosh, and they hid all of it. How did they do that?
Cool. I think we want to probably wrap up with talking about legacy and franchise. So obviously, I think we've honestly talked about we've touched on the
Yeah.
franchise enough. We probably don't need to get into it. If we enjoyed talking about this movie, hopefully we can get together again and talk about
Yeah.
subsequent films. I do. You were asking Bill about the other films or other things that are ripped off the ending, and I am
Mhm.
curious. So like, I feel like obviously the Road Warrior had like a million imitators in the 80s. I'm kind of curious what if anyone has any thoughts on, were there films or other media that the first installment specifically influenced, or do we feel like was it really until the Road Warrior that people kind of started ripping off George Miller?
I think it was the Road Warrior.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really think it's the Road
All right.
Warrior that
Well,
just
good talk.
totally got. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because I was trying to think. I was like, there are obviously a lot of like action car films in that era, but I can't think of anything that was like you draw a direct line to like, oh yeah, they obviously were trying to do Mad Max. So one thing I did find, and this is a podcast exclusive.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, wait for it. So I was kind of trying to research and see if I could find anyone's thoughts on this, and I did find a lot of places where it said that the end of Saw was influenced by or inspired by the last scene with the hacksaw, if you know what I'm talking about.
Oh,
Believe
okay.
that.
I
Yeah.
can see that.
So here's the thing. I couldn't, but I wanted to go and be a good journalist, just like Mad Max was, and find an actual quote or them talking about this. Couldn't find anything anywhere, so I actually contacted Lee Winnell, and by contacted I mean I tweeted at him and asked him about this. He did not respond to my tweet, but he did like it. I'm not making this up. So I
That's
think
great.
that is confirmation that the end of Saw is directly inspired by the end of Mad Max. So there you go.
Well, that's
So
cool.
we're talking the end of the first Saw where he
Yeah.
throws.
Yeah.
He says the
Yeah.
key is in that bathtub.
Yeah.
Or
And he has to basically. I can't even remember. It's been a long time since I've seen Saw. I don't remember if they even show it, but yeah, they're inferring that he has to cut himself to get out.
Yeah. And I'm guessing you're never going to get anyone in Hollywood, if they're smart, to ever admit they were influenced by anything, because people sue at the drop of a hat, and
Yeah. Fair enough.
I mean, even for influence, I don't know about that. I mean, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was kind of funny. And then I think the only other thing I have to say about the kind of franchise, it's kind of interesting because we were talking about George Miller said he didn't really know why this movie was successful. And I have one more quote I wanted to read from the same interview where he says, in Japan, they called it a samurai movie and said, oh, you must know Kurosawa. I've never heard of Kurosawa. In France, they said, oh, it's a Western on wheels. In Scandinavia, they said, he's a Viking. And basically, I began to realize that somehow there was something else going on there. And that was the realization that there was a collective unconsciousness going on. So this is actually really interesting to me because I think, Bill, you mentioned the evolution of the films after this, and they kind of, they kind of have the hero's journey. And apparently this was kind of it was very interesting kind of what I take it to be like this backwards inspiration where supposedly after he came to this realization, he was trying to figure out why. And there are, I guess, a couple of different stories. Supposedly, maybe he was talking to George Lucas, or maybe it was someone else. But basically, someone was like, "Hey, have you heard of A Hero with a Thousand Faces or Joseph Campbell?"
Wow.
And that's when he actually started reading that stuff. And so the first film, I don't think, and we were getting back to you were talking about them trying to write a franchise. But a lot of the things that come into the later films where you talk about him as like an archetype and the hero's journey and stuff, I think it was oddly enough the incidental success of this film that put George Miller, who's obviously an absolute genius and one of those people who, again, like he gets an idea in his head and he has to, follow it for the rest of his life. It's almost as if he got this idea in his head and he decided that that's what he was going to do in the subsequent films, and that's kind of what this series became.
Interesting. Yeah.
That's interesting. Though I am shocked that he was a cinephile and had no idea who Kurosawa
Yeah,
was.
that actually is the more shocking thing to me.
Again, this was a, and I, who knows, maybe he did know who Joseph Campbell was, but there's an interview from the mid 2000s, so it's also well after the fact. But but yeah,
Well, I can see not knowing Joseph Campbell, but not knowing Kurosawa.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, hey, maybe they didn't have Kurosawa films in Australia.
Maybe not. Yeah.
And then other than that, I wanted to mention in other media, it's kind of interesting to me that there have actually been 2 video games
Called Mad Max. There was a 1990 NES game, oddly enough, not based on Mad Max. It was based on the Road Warrior. As we've said, no one remembers Mad Max. And there was also a 2015 video game called Mad Max, based on Fury Road. So again, two games called Mad Max, neither of which were based on the movie that popular culture has forgotten, but not really.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I don't know. Any other thoughts on any of that stuff before we kind of wrap up here?
There one other thing talking about video games, because it made me think of this. There was a game that I played when I was probably 14 on the Commodore 64 called The Last V8, and I had no idea if that was based on the.
It must be, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I just looked it up. Oh wait, no, yes, it says the title echoes a plot from the Mad Max series.
Yeah.
It was also published on it was put out by a company, and the label they were using was MAD. It was like an acronym for something, but it also sort of ties into Mad Max.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, a lot of things. There were a lot of games. There were actually a few other games that were going to be based on Mad Max properties.
But yeah, I don't think this was based on it at all. I think they just sort of the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, cool. Anything else, or do we want to kind of wrap up and talk about kind of final thoughts? And I don't know. I thought we would maybe rank this and see how everyone ultimately actually feels about the movie.
Yeah.
Well, how do we feel about the movie? I don't know. Let's do we want to do just like ratings and kind of give our final sign off? Is that work for you guys?
Yeah. How are we rating it within the? Well, I guess we can't really within the series because.
I think we're just rating it. I think we're just rating it as a film, as a standalone film.
Do we have like a scale?
We're gonna pretend. So we're gonna pretend that we're still. I want to do we're in the video store here. So let's say out of 5 VHS tapes, how many VHS tapes would you give this film? Let's start with Paul. Yeah.
Can we do half VHS? Can we do half a tape?
I was gonna no, hold on. I was gonna say you can do a full a rewound VHS tape, or you can do an unrewound VHS tape, which is
that's getting too confusing to me there.
Yeah, nope. That's for you can do half VHS tapes, Paul.
Oh, okay. But actually, I'd probably give it 4 VHS tapes. I mean, it's because I think 3 would be too little and 3.5 not quite enough, and so 4 or maybe 3.76529.
Just stop. You're embarrassing yourself.
Okay.
VHS tapes. I mean, it's really good. It's more because because we know where it goes. I mean, it's a fun exploitation film. You can watch it just on its own.
Excuse me, sorry, Ozploitation.
Well, exploitation.
How many times do you have to be reminded?
Ozploitation is a subset of exploitation. All exploitation films are exploitation films, so it is correct.
Okay,
but
fair enough.
Whatever.
Sorry.
Ozploitations films, and
it's a real term. Look it up.
No, I believe you. I know because there's like documentaries and stuff. And anyway, so anyway, it's a fun Ozploitation film, and again, it's the growth you see of it, and I think it's better than it has a right to be for the amount of cash that was that it cost. I mean, it goes far beyond its budget.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
and I'd like to see some more of these films. I think some more of them might be good.
I mean, Miller's been talking about making another one for years, but I don't think he's going to make it in Hollywood. So,
yeah,
I'd like to see what he'd do with talking pigs. So that's
one shot pony.
Yeah, or talking penguins.
Yeah, that's true.
Renee, how about you?
rewound enough that I wouldn't get charged a fee, but not all the way to the beginning. I enjoy. I'm gonna give it a solid 4. It's not my favorite of the series, but I think it lays it's a good solid foundation, I think, to what happens in the future. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a solid 4.
Cool. Alan, with no context whatsoever for the rest of the series, how would what do
Yeah,
you think first?
unfortunately, I give it a 1.5.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Oh my
Okay, so
god.
we found our
Um,
French judge here.
Yeah.
yeah, I knew that you guys wouldn't like that, but to me,
No.
okay, this film I think is in a category of a lot of films where people say, "Oh my gosh, you haven't seen that? You got to see it. It's so great." And I think I think a lot of these films, for me at least, they are built up to be more than they are, and me not have seen any of the other ones. I mean, yeah, I didn't think this. I mean, I saw nothing special about this film. I mean, based on this film, if I didn't know anything else, I wouldn't watch the second one.
Oh,
I would watch
oh.
something else.
That's
I'm
actually
feeling
kind of cool. I mean, that's why it's neat to have your.
I hate to be the guy that does that, but I think I'm
No.
going to be like that
Yeah,
on
yeah.
all the films.
No, but
No,
that's,
that's
that's
fine.
good. I mean, that's where we get like a fresh
Yeah.
perspective. You don't have
Definitely.
have
This is
nostalgia.
how I feel about a Serbian film. You've talked about it so much that
Come on.
I can't
We're
believe
not
that it will
going
ever live
there.
up to its
You had to
praise.
bring it up.
No, but the
Look,
other
really.
thing about this film and a lot of films like this where I like give a low rating where some people they think that they're a lot better than I do. I think this film would have probably been a lot better, for me in 1980 than it is, in 2020. But hey, I can't rewind time. I can only rewind my VHS
So
tapes.
So you're saying in 1980 you had a lick of common sense, but now we gotta deal with you as you are.
Lost it in your old age.
He's coming at it without any nostalgia, with no knowledge of what the rest of the series is, and he might not
Yeah.
like the rest of the series either. Which I'm really glad that we've got someone like you,
Right.
Alan.
Well, no,
No,
and
excuse me, Dad.
actually, I'm
Yeah.
actually very invigorated to watch the next one because, like I said, based on this, I wouldn't watch the next one. But from what you guys have told me, and this
Oh.
doesn't happen much, the sequel is better than the original. So,
Oh yes.
that's, I mean, that's great.
No,
Maybe it's
fair
gonna-
enough. Yeah.
40 years
Well,
from now.
I'm going to say right now that everyone here is contractually obligated to do at least 4 episodes because
Right.
I want to go through the whole series now with Alan and see how his
Right.
opinion changes. And if we get to, Fury Road and he's still giving it 1.5
Oh,
VHS
then their fists will be
and
flying.
we
Yeah.
will,
Never
just
speak
not
to you
talk to him
again.
anymore. That's fine.
Yeah.
I've lost friendships over less, so no, but thank you. No, that's good. I do like having someone who's the
Sure.
contrarian. Bill, how about you?
Everybody needs a pooper. That's why we invited you. Uh,
I can tell
it's
that
a
Bill
stop.
does not agree with my analysis.
No, it's a 4. It's a 4, and
Yep.
the only reason I don't give it a 5 is that there'd be nothing left for Road Warrior and Fury Road. I mean, which
Right.
are better films because they're 2 of the best films ever made. So
I noticed how you didn't mention Thunderdome in there either.
Thunderdome. Thunderdome
We'll
was a
cross
solid.
that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a 4.127 something. It's Thunderdome has the disadvantage of coming after the Road Warrior and basically trying to be the Road Warrior, and with a couple more bells and whistles. Anyway, yeah, we'll get to that.
No, I can't wait for that episode because I feel like I will be probably the contrarian there, but we'll see.
No, you think it's the best?
I don't think it's the best. I adore it for certain. There are
We'll get
certain
to that
things
when we
about
get
it
to it because
I-
I've
Yeah,
got
we'll cross that
definite
bridge.
ideas on that.
I mean,
one.
I give it a 4, but I'm giving it a 4 in the sense that it's I judge every film in its context. Like I don't go to a low budget horror movie judging it the way I would a Marvel movie. If I give a 4 to a low budget horror movie and a 4 to a Marvel movie, clearly the Doctor Strange is a better movie than some low budget zombie movie, most likely. but I take it within its own, in its little genre. This is as good as it gets, and within the constraints that they had and everything. So I'm looking at this as a very low budget. 300,000 ain't much, and it wasn't much even back then. Ozploitation movie. I thought they got a lot out of it. See, I notice how I did it right.
Yes.
Um,
Well, someone's
I-
getting invited back.
that's right. It shows a young filmmaker who is knocking it out of the park, which most first-time filmmakers don't do. He's got that young energy, and he got better. He got better, and he's still showing us things that we haven't seen before. So, he should go down. He will be remembered as, I think, one of the great filmmakers of our time. He hasn't really made a lot of movies when you look at the whole list, how many feature films he's made. And he took that weird little detour to making Happy Feet, which are fine movies, but
So
I
let's be
feel
fair.
like
Yeah,
I
also
feel-
made a shit ton of money.
yes, oh yeah, I take nothing from it. It's just
Hand over
I feel
fist.
like if that had been made by anyone on Pixar's payroll, they would have been pretty much as good. And I may be wrong about that. That I feel like animated movies. The director of an animated movie. I'd be interested to know exactly how that happens, how you direct and everything. What's the process to doing that? I mean, it almost feels more like the editor is the director. You tell the animator, it's complicated, but and they're great movies. But I just feel like I kind of wish I'd seen some more George Miller doing a few other things. He did the Witches of Eastwick, didn't he?
I think he did, yeah.
Oh wow.
and
Did that.
Lorenzo's Oil. I
Lorenzo's
mean,
Oil, Babe
yeah.
2. Yeah,
Babe
no,
2, which I don't like as much as Babe 1, quite frankly. I like
Yeah.
Babe better than Babe 2. It's
Yeah,
a
Babe
great
2 is a
it's
completely different movie. It's
yeah.
wackadoodle.
I just don't think it has it's a beautifully made movie, and he gets a lot out of it. I mean, he works some magic there, but I don't think it has the pure story that Babe did. So, but back to Mad Max.
I was gonna say, how many VHS tapes are you giving Babe 2?
Right. Oh, I don't know.
No, I think it's interesting too.
I don't know. I'd have to see it again. I've only seen it once.
We could probably do an entire episode on the unmade films of George Miller, because he has a lot of original.
Wasn't he supposed to do Justice League Dark?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
Oh.
Watch Fury Road and imagine what Justice League would have looked like from that director
No.
and what we got, and go cry yourself to sleep.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. Also
Wow.
took him. We'll talk about it when we get to that episode. But Fury Road, which took him like 15 years to make.
So a 4 from me, and a good movie, and anyone who hasn't seen it should check it out. It's
And
available on
anyone who has seen it and doesn't like it is wrong.
Yeah, there you go. Alan.
Alan.
I've
I'm just
seen
kidding.
it now.
That's true.
I respect your opinion, Alan. I may disagree, but I respect it.
One of us does.
So I ranked all these movies beforehand, and I think that this one is definitely a 4 for me. There are definitely a lot of rough edges. It's not a perfect movie, but there are any deficiencies it has, you can overlook due to so many amazing qualities from such a just raw kind of cast, or raw crew and the cast. And I don't know, I think it's pretty amazing, like you said, Bill, for a first film. And I'm not even grading on a scale there, because I think it still holds up against some of the films made in that era, and even just action films in general. So yeah, I'm gonna say it's a 4 VHSer.
Is there another biker / car race movie that's even in its league?
In terms of the quality or the success?
In terms of just being a good movie.
So I'm going to catch a lot of shit for this. I will say I thoroughly enjoy the Fast and Furious franchise, but on a different level than this franchise.
Sure. Oh, as a popcorn movie franchise, they're great. I mean, screw you, laws of physics, but they're great.
No, they're super fun. They're super fun.
Yeah, but
Right.
no, I don't think. I'm trying to think now. I don't think that there's another. Yeah, I don't think there's another car franchise. Obviously, there are other standalones. There's Gone in 60 Seconds, but yeah, there's nothing like
I mean, that's the thing too, right? There is literally nothing like this franchise. There are a lot of imitators. There are
Mhm.
a lot of sources he pulls from, and a lot of sources that pull from him. But there is absolutely nothing that even really comes close to like the what George Miller makes when he finally gets his vision on screen. Cool. So
Yeah.
well, I'm gonna sum it up. I'm gonna sum it up,
Yeah.
and it's rounding up. That's a average of 3, which I think is still respectable. Brought far down by one of our votes, but that's fine.
Mhm.
By the way, folks, you could have watched the movie twice in the time it's taken us to talk about it.
Well, yeah, well,
Aw.
hopefully hopefully we'll get an even 2 hours out of this and it won't run much longer. But we'll see. And if anyone's actually listening to this in the future, thanks for listening.
Yes.
This is obviously our first episode. Hope you enjoyed it. As of this recording, we don't actually have a name for the podcast, so I don't have a website or any social account. But hey, I'll probably tack something onto the end of this before I post it, telling you.
I thought we were going with the Paul Cardulo experience.
No, because I was brought to
Uh.
mind. That was a Hendrix reference, not a Joe Rogan reference. And
Uh-huh.
once I heard Joe Rogan had already done that gag, I just burn it up. Yeah.
Anyways,
Joe Rogan ruins everything, man.
You're not wrong. But yeah, so I'll probably tack something on the end of this, letting you know how to get in contact with us. You can tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, and hopefully
We're gonna get a bunch of letters saying I didn't like all the trashing of Joe Rogan.
you know
Our
what?
first
but at least
episode,
get
we're
us
starting a
noticed.
feud with a guy with 12 million followers. Smooth move.
I liked him in news radio. I thought he did a good job in that
love
show.
news radio.
Yeah.
Love news radio. You're kidding, but you're not wrong. There's a podcast I listen to. They do like 3-hour episodes, and if they say one thing that's like political, that's the reviews they get will be the 1 star. Oh, they get political. So yeah. Hey, look, if you're out there listening, before you give us a rating, love Joe Rogan on news radio.
Oh,
Love his character. Haven't heard his show, so I can't say anything about it. But if you want to get in contact with Paul Cardillo, his name again.
Yeah.
I've never listened to a show. It was simply, he had already stolen the name. That's all.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Fair enough. He's obviously genius at marketing then. So cool. Well, I think that's it. Thank you guys so much. I know we don't really have any professional well, I guess actually, Bill, do you want to plug anything, Bill, before we go? Where can people find more of your witty insights?
More of my witticisms? Decades of Horror at gruesomemagazine.com. We do different decades, and I'm on both the 70s and the 80s decades. The 70s because I'm old enough to have actually gone to the movie theater to watch these movies in the 70s. And we just pick a film and talk about it for about an hour. And it's great cast, great bunch of people on the podcast, a lot of fun. And we all just love movies. But I like this. I like the vibe here, the personalities and everything.
Yeah.
Everybody brings something to the table. Alan is wrong, for
Even
example.
Alan.
That's good to have that.
I love it. I love having you. It's so often that I find myself being the contrarian. So honestly, Alan, I thank you for your service.
Yeah, I thought everybody was going to agree with me.
Wow. That just shows the world,
like-
the delusional bubble you live in.
Because when I said, "Hey, Alan, let's do a 3-hour podcast about this movie because I hate it." Obviously,
Well, I think we will have some of those.
No, that's Jerry Chandler. That's what he'll do to you. It's like, yeah, let's just talk for 3 hours about the Loch Ness horror or something. And yeah.
well, does anyone else have any other projects or anything they want to plug before we leave, or anything else?
Chirp. No.
Cool.
Still working on my one-man show. Once we get that
great.
done,
We'll keep people posted. Well, there were a lot of cars used in Mad Max, and in 2 weeks we'll be talking about even more used cars when we discuss Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale's used cars. In the meantime, if you like what you heard, please give us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, drop us a line at videostorejunkies.com, or you can hit us up on Twitter at VideoJunkiesPod. Good night.
It's been a blast. Bye.
Bye.
And we do have a bit of an unfortunate postscript to this episode. Due to delays in getting the podcast off the ground, we actually recorded this well before it's going live.
So in the interim, Keays-Byrne did pass away at the beginning of December 2020. He was a great actor. We loved him in Mad Max, obviously. And I can guarantee you we're going to have a lot more to say about him when we get to Fury Road. In my opinion, he was probably one of the all-time great movie villains, and he will be missed.
You made the news again.
Charges relating to the slaying of a main force patrol officer.
Who was he?
In a road blockade accident last month. Just another glory roader, I guess.
Toe Cutter is a glory roader, one of the most sadistic.
Anything I say, anything you say, what a wonderful philosophy you have. Take him away.
I want my baby.
You've not got a sense of humor.
Please don't hurt my baby.
You've got a pretty face, though.
Both want the other dead. But only one can have his way. Mad Max. You don't want to make Max mad. Because when Max gets mad, he gets even. American International presents Mad Max, the maximum force of the future.